I'm the highest civilization in the universe. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301, The Turbo Beast Clone. Li Ming aimed in that direction and flew into the air. When Bona left in a hurry just now, Li Ming's eyes had already seen the information related to the current situation. It was the clone of the Turbo Beast that began to attack the number 1 material warehouse. As for the power of the clone of the Turbo Beast, it can be seen from Bona's face just now that it is not so easy to deal with. Li Ming does not know much about the Turbo Beast, because even the information about this beast mentioned in the Beast family illustration is very limited and very strange. According to the Beast family illustration, the Turbo Beast is a very rare magic beast. It can even be said that this creature should not exist in our current universe, because this creature has no origin and is very mysterious. The most important thing is that this beast is extremely powerful and its strength is unfathomable. The record only vaguely describes the general appearance of this beast, without detailed explanation, and the ability of this beast is not clearly recorded. It is only known that anyone who has been swallowed by this beast has not been able to come out alive. Such an existence naturally has nothing to do with Li Ming, but that number 1 material warehouse has a lot to do with Li Ming, because there is a Huayu in the number 1 material warehouse. When attacking, the Turbo clone will first flood the target area with haze, then search for items containing energy and leave with the haze. This is undoubtedly an opportunity for Li Ming, so Li Ming went straight to the number 1 material warehouse. The number 1 material warehouse is a circular building, located not far from the current building. The overall building looks shabby and seems to have been abandoned for a long time, but that is only the appearance. Facing the approaching haze, nearly 100 7th level soldiers have gathered in front of the circular building. This should be the soldiers of the giant building who have also been transferred there, because Li Ming has not seen low level soldiers when he came out of the giant building. Each soldier holds a blue light sword, ready to fight at any time. Li Ming's figure is approaching from the air little by little, and a pair of wise eyes can see the whole situation. The clone of the Turbo Beast is actually a small part of the body of the Turbo Beast itself, just like a drop of water in a glass of water. It is inconspicuous to it itself, but it is extraordinary to aliens. This clone is like a sandstorm close to the ground. You can only see a cloud of fog sweeping over here. The ability of the clone of the Turbo Beast depends on the original body of the Turbo Beast. As for the Turbo Beast itself, its abilities include illusion fog, mirror fog, death poison fog, etc. The Turbo Beast itself can switch and use these abilities at will, but the clone can only carry one. The ability used by this clone at the moment is Puppet Black Fog. The grey fog group is close to the ground and crawls quickly, like a ball of liquid. The color of the fog is lighter at the outermost edge, and the deeper it goes, the darker the color. The 2 9th levels, Bona and Asibi, are leading the way in front of the circular building. Behind them are several 8th levels and a large number of 7th levels. Watching the fog approaching little by little, each alien clenched the blue light sword in his hand again, and the tense atmosphere of a war that is about to break out has spread. At this time, everyone is paying full attention to the fog facing the opposite side, and no one pays attention to Li Ming, who is slowly approaching the circular building behind him. But Li Ming still had to be more careful. Just as Li Ming was about to approach the circular building, his body suddenly paused. His eyes could not help but stare at the direction of the fog. The muscles under his eye bags twitched slightly, and his eyes widened a little. What attracted Li Ming's attention was the rapidly changing fog. Black shadows began to appear inside the grey fog. These shadows were strange in shape, some high, some low, some large, some small, and some even in the air. It was difficult to see their true appearance, but even the black shadows were frightening. After a few seconds, these shadows rushed out of the fog, densely packed, like a large army, but their positions were not the same, chaotic, but their appearance and momentum were extremely shocking. Some were 5 or 6 meters tall, wearing black armor, holding a huge axe, and had a head like a cow. Some were only more than 1 meter tall, holding a big knife, and running quickly on the ground. Some were like vicious dogs, revealing a mouthful of sharp fangs. In addition to the ground, there were also many in the air. Those in the air were even more varied, and no less than those on the ground. Some were strange birds with their wings spread out, some were giant beasts with extra wings, and some even looked like aliens, but they also had wings on their backs. Each of them had a hideous face and murderous aura, and they went straight to the alien troops in front of the circular building. Ashby had a serious face, and his trembling lips were full of ferocity. He waved his right hand, and the blue light sword was already in his hand. He shouted, "Kill." Before the fog arrived, the shadow troops and the alien army had already entangled and fought together. The blue light swords were like beams of light, swinging quickly in the shadows. The sharp high-energy lightsabers were all high-tech products with extraordinary power. Those shadows were obviously unable to resist. Once they were hit by the lightsabers, they turned into dust and mist and disappeared directly. But after all, there were enough of them, several times more than the alien army, so they were not at all inferior. Watching all this with his eyes, Li Ming did not hesitate, and moved towards the circular building. The battle has already begun here, and Li Ming has also begun to sneak into the circular building, but in another place, something related to Li Ming is also being secretly discussed. At this moment, in the phenomenon galaxy in the distant outer system, in a circular building on the Galaxy star, 4 figures are sitting around a meteorite table, each with a serious expression, and are talking about something important. The 4 people are sisters Adriana and Adriwinnie from the Central System Critical Point Space Station, and Millicent and Winslow from the Canis Major Dwarf Galaxy. Adriwinnie, dressed in black, lightly tapped the center of the meteorite table, and a beam of blue light as thick as a finger suddenly shot out from the center of the table. After a few seconds, the blue light opened in a fan-shaped manner, like a scattered light. In the blue light, phantoms emerged little by little, and a star system has been formed under the weaving of the blue light, which is the phenomenon galaxy. Adriwinnie looked at the phantom galaxy, then turned her eyes to Millicent across from her, and said, "This is the entire Chaos Galaxy. The Chinese high-level officials have agreed to your long-term settlement here, but there are still some rules that cannot be broken." Millicent looked at the galaxy in front of her, smiled lightly, and suddenly turned her eyes to look at Adriana on the side, with a slight smile on her lips, and said, "But I'm still very dissatisfied with you as the boss." Adriana's face changed when she heard this, revealing a bit of displeasure. Seeing Adriana's expression, Millicent became even more angry, but she didn't show it too obviously, but said, "You seem to be dissatisfied with me too. We two really have similar interests." Under the seemingly casual words, there was a smell of gunpowder. At this time, Adriwinnie suddenly glanced at Adriana fiercely, then turned her eyes back to Millicent, and said, "It was just a misunderstanding about that matter, and all the causes were caused by this person." As she spoke, Adriwinnie lightly tapped the meteorite table again. The blue light interweaves and changes, and the original galaxy phantom disappears, replaced by a person's image, which is Li Ming. As soon as she saw Li Ming, Millicent was immediately attracted. Adriwinnie also hurriedly said, "This is the guy we have been chasing. This person is afraid of chaos in the world, so you don't have to believe his words. Of course, we have completely mastered the whereabouts of this person, and I believe he will be caught soon." Adriwinnie added at last. Millicent nodded slightly, with a strange smile on her face, staring at Li Ming's phantom, and said, "I'm very interested in killing this person with my own hands. It won't make sense." Adriwinnie paused after hearing this, and showed a hesitant look on her face. After looking at Adriana beside her, she said, "We will try our best to satisfy you." Well, Millicent nodded with satisfaction. While negotiating here, Li Ming, who is located on the Bergson star of the Croft star system, has already carried out his plan, but at this time, the number 1 material warehouse has been completely changed, and a huge change has occurred. Chapter 302, transformed into a warcraft. The fog has completely enveloped the number 1 material warehouse. From a distance, the circular building can no longer be seen, only the fog. Li Ming is walking quickly in the corridor of the circular building. As for the location of Huayu, it has been found by Felang. Li Ming is excited. After all, Huayu is an extremely important material for advancement. If he gets this Huayu, Li Ming will be one step closer to advancement. His face is full of smiles, and even his body is shaking slightly with excitement, as if Huayu is already in his pocket. At this time, the fog is everywhere, and all kinds of strange phenomena are happening in layers. Even the corridor where Li Ming is completely filled with fog, and some fog vortexes are also emerging little by little. The fog vortex randomly forms at any point in the fog group, and the vortex continues to condense, as if there is a suction point in the middle of the vortex, and the fog continues to gather like this focus. As Li Ming walks, such vortex points continue to appear around him. After a few seconds of short condensation, the vortex point turns into a pure black sphere, like a black crystal ball, and black fog continues to diffuse from the surface. Under Li Ming's keen eyes, the vortex seemed not to be just the condensation of fog, but a little bit of energy gathering, that is, gathering the energy points of the surrounding fog. After the gathering was completed, the black sphere began to wriggle and deform, and then a monster came out. These monsters are just like those black shadow troops outside. In other words, the black shadow troops in the fog are also formed in this way. At this time, this scene is being played out in various places in the circular building. These black shadow troops seem to be infinite, but every time they are formed, they will cause a certain consumption of the fog as a whole. If the formed troops are killed, the condensed fog will disappear forever. As long as they are killed continuously, the fog clone will eventually be defeated. With Li Ming's strength, he naturally would not put these monsters in his eyes. The arc on the surface of the body kept beating, and the white light kept shining around the body. The monsters that had just formed were directly shattered by a white electric light before they approached Li Ming. The powerful mental power enables Li Ming to control the arc on his body with his consciousness, which is naturally beyond the reach of those monsters. After passing through the corridor, Li Ming came to a round metal door at the end. He pointed his right hand at the metal door and a green light flew out of his hand. Ripples flashed and the black metal door suddenly flashed and disappeared. After passing through the metal door, Li Ming came to a hall, which was very empty. There was a round light above his head and a golden disc under his feet. Something was floating between the light and the disc. This thing was like a plate, golden in color, and it was Huayu. Li Ming's figure was still in place. Although he already had one, he couldn't hide his shock and excitement when he saw it again. It's Huayu. It's so beautiful. I didn't expect I got another one so soon. With exclamation in his mouth, Li Ming's right hand had slowly raised up, aimed at Huayu, and grabbed it in the air. But at this moment, a huge fog point formed in this space. The vortex was obviously several times larger than the previous one. The difference was that this vortex did not form a monster, but condensed a face. This face was rather blurry, all turned upside down by the mist, but there were two places that were very clear. One was a huge eye, and the other was a mouth. One eye and one mouth made people feel very uncomfortable after seeing it. Li Ming just glanced at it, not caring at all, and his hands did not stop, and suddenly his 5 fingers grabbed hard, and Huayu was already in his hand. From you, I can smell the taste of delicious food. The one-eyed misty face stared at Li Ming and said slowly. Li Ming glanced at the other party without caring. For this energy body formed by the mist, Li Ming did not care at all. He raised his left hand slightly, and a ball of white electric arc had formed in the palm of his hand. The palm shining with white light was aimed at the one-eyed mist. Are you going to kill me? I really want to try your tricks. Li Ming looked at the big face with disdain, and had no interest in listening to its nonsense. He exerted a little force on his left hand, and the electromagnetic wave shot out, and a muffled sound of bang was heard, and the electromagnetic wave hit the mist. The original one-eyed face was scattered under this blow, just like a ball of smoke being blown away. Looking at the dispersing mist, Li Ming turned and left. The battle outside the circular building was still going on. The alien troops were everywhere, and many 7th level soldiers had fallen. After Li Ming got what he wanted, he went from the building to the top of the building. Looking at the melee around him, Li Ming narrowed his eyes slightly, and his attention quickly stopped on Boner and Asibi. He stared at them intently, and he had his own plan in mind. He thought to himself, now I have 2 Huayu. As long as I get another Huayu, then I can advance to the first level civilization, but if I want to leave here, I must get the star map key, and it is a star map key to the central system. As he was thinking, the mist in front of him suddenly changed, which interrupted Li Ming's thoughts, and his eyes couldn't help but look into the distance. Suddenly, a huge black dot appeared in the sky in the distance. When the black dot appeared, it was 5 or 6 meters long and wide, which was incomparably huge compared to those small black dots. As this huge black dot appeared, all the fog around it began to gather here. Even the monsters fighting on the ground dissipated and flew into the air. After the fog condensed, the black dot also grew larger. This made the soldiers who were fighting the black shadow monster suddenly startled, because their opponents turned into fog and flew into the sky. This phenomenon made the alien troops all look up at the black dot in the sky. Li Ming, whose eyes were focused, his eyebrows were tightened, and his expression became serious. He whispered, "All the energy in the fog is gathering here." In a moment, the smoke that was originally everywhere had disappeared. At the same time, a huge round black sphere had emerged in the sky. The diameter of the black sphere had reached dozens of meters, but it was still condensing. At this time, even the naked eye could see the constantly compressed energy, just like a huge piece of cotton candy that had been shrunk and condensed. While the black ball continued to shrink and condense, its appearance was constantly changing, sometimes convex, sometimes concave, making the sphere irregular. It was like something was struggling in the black ball. After more than 10 seconds, the black ball of tens of meters was only 7 or 8 meters long and wide, and it was irregular. At this time, a rough outline had appeared. The black condensed into dark red, and the appearance was transformed into a beast. This beast had a pair of curved horns on its head, like 2 scimitars. Its head was similar to that of a lion. It had only one eye in its face, but its body could stand like an orangutan. Its feet were sharp claws, but its hands were different. They had 5 fingers like humans. This giant beast was nearly 5 meters tall, not too big, but its ferocious face was terrifying. People could not help but show fear and worry. The most important thing was that the whole body of this beast was sometimes dark red and sometimes dark. The color flowed and changed on the surface of its body, which was the embodiment of powerful energy. The one eye blinked slightly, and the eyeball first looked at Boner and others underground. With a roar, it flew towards the ground, where these people were. Boner and Assi were startled and jumped to the sides to dodge. Although the 2 9th level soldiers could quickly dodge with their 9th level strength, the 7th level and 8th level soldiers could not. A black shadow fell from the sky, and a boom sound pierced through their ears. The moment it landed, dark red arcs of electricity spread out. Smoke and dust were flying, and the earth was shaking slightly. The dust blocked the view, but Mer could see the dark red arcs jumping through the dust, and the crackling sound was endless. Boner and Assi fell to a distance, and looked at the giant beast in front of them cautiously. While staring at the giant beast, he did not forget to check the surroundings. There were still dozens of 7th level soldiers. Boner gently waved his arm, signaling these people to retreat, and said, "You all retreat a little further." Hearing this order, the frightened soldiers hurriedly ran away. Chapter 303, Li Ming appears. The dust gradually dissipated in the breeze, and the dark red giant beast had already appeared. There was a big pit under its feet, and many soldiers' bodies were lying around. On the surface of the giant beast, dark red arcs were constantly jumping. Boner clenched the blue sword in his hand again, and looked in the direction of Ashby. When their eyes met, they immediately understood each other's intentions, and they looked very tacit. No words were needed. After a glance, Boner moved and rushed over first. Seeing Boner move, the dark red giant beast suddenly roared, and its figure flashed to meet it. The giant beast was extremely fast. It came to Boner in a flash. Li Ming, who was watching from a distance, couldn't help but frown, and his expression changed slightly. The speed was indeed too fast, like teleportation. Boner had been dealing with this kind of monster for many years, and was considered experienced in many battles, but he was still startled when he saw the figure suddenly approaching him. He opened his eyes wide and without thinking, he raised his right hand and put the blue sword in front of him. Bang! A violent collision sounded, and in front of the powerful impact of the giant beast, Boner flew out directly like a bullet. With a loud boom, Odom was knocked to the ground in the distance, and dust and smoke rose up and formed a big pit on the ground. At the same time, Ashby had jumped above the giant beast's head without knowing when, holding the blue sword in both hands and slashing it head on. Dang. Blue light and dark red light burst out, and the giant beast blocked the slash with the horns on its head. The powerful energy spread out from the intersection, just like something suddenly exploded, and the airwave swept the sand and dust away. Ashby's expression changed, and he dared not continue to attack. He stepped back and jumped away. At this time, Boner came out from the smoke and dust. There was nothing unusual on his body, as if he had not been injured just now. It's different from before. It's more powerful. Activate the destroyer? Ashby did not move, but just glanced at Boner. Boner stared at the beast and said, "It's not the right time yet. Our energy supply has not arrived yet. If we use a destroyer now, what will we do next time? That method, we still have to try." Boner continued. Ashby did not reply, but just looked at the beast with his eyes, still ready to attack again. The beast straightened up, turned his eyes left and right, looked at the two people in front of him, and finally fixed his eyes on Boner again. His expression suddenly changed, and the black arc on his body jumped more violently. The sound of a compact electric arc rang in his ears. The beast's body moved slightly, and disappeared on the spot. Boner's eyebrows immediately shrank, and the blue lightsaber in his hand swung out quickly. Swoosh! The blue light twisted and turned, and the originally straight long sword suddenly stretched and became longer, swinging left and right like a flexible rope. With a few crisp sounds of pa pa pa, the blue lightsaber formed a vortex in front of Boner like a blue line. The figure of the beast could not be seen, but the dark red electric arc jumped out first. Boner saw the right time and suddenly pulled hard with one hand. The vortex-shaped blue line tightened instantly. The beast that had not been seen before suddenly appeared, but it had been tightly bound by the blue line. A softened lightsaber with sensing ability. It's unexpected, Boner said proudly, looking at the beast with contempt. The beast's arms and body were tightly bound, unable to move at all. But after hearing this, it opened its mouth and let out an angry roar. Its dark red body suddenly began to expand, making the blue lines unable to hold on. Boner was shocked when she saw this. He quickly glanced at Ashby beside him and said, "Hurry up." Ashby jumped into the air with his feet, holding the hilt tightly with both hands. At this time, circles of blue halos appeared on his hands, which were the energy injected into his body. Under this blessing, the originally slender blue lightsaber suddenly became brighter. The blue light expanded rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the lightsaber had become a giant sword 4 or 5 meters long and more than 1 meter wide. The increase in size was the increase in energy. Just looking at the appearance, one could already sense its powerful power. While the beast was bound, Ashby shouted and chopped it down with both hands. Just as the giant sword was about to strike, the dark red arc on the beast's body suddenly expanded, and the dark red arc expanded to a range of 100 meters, which enveloped Ashby in the air and Boner, who was not far away. This sudden expansion made Li Ming startled, as if something expanded 100 times in an instant. Even if that thing was inconspicuous, it was shocking. With such powerful energy, the arc also had extremely powerful destructive power. Ashby's figure suddenly fell back to the ground with a thump, and the blow still failed to strike. My body actually started to stiffen. I can't move. Ashby looked at his hands in surprise, and saw a little bit of grey matter began to form on the surface of his body, making his body, as if it was petrified, and began to stiffen, and unable to move. Boner was no exception. The armor on his body also changed from black to grey, and the cloak behind him, that was originally fluttering in the wind, also stopped in the air, as if everything was petrified. The appearance of this phenomenon made the faces of both of them look extremely ugly. Fear spread rapidly in their hearts. The entire body surface seemed to be covered with a layer of ash. The muscles on their faces twitched slightly, and bloodshot appeared in their wide eyes. The blue lightsaber wrapped around the giant beast became dimmer and dimmer, and finally broke apart with a bang, turning into stars, and disappearing in the air. The only thing that bound the giant beast broke apart. The sound was like the sound of death to Boner and Ashby. The two looked at the giant beast in horror, but their bodies could not move at all. The taste of waiting for death was unimaginable to anyone. The giant beast's eyes turned, and this time they looked at Ashby, who was closer to his body. When he looked into the giant beast's one eye, Ashby's eyebrows were tightened, and his teeth were clenched tightly. The giant beast's right hand suddenly raised and smashed towards Ashby's head. Pop! The dark red claw had already fallen, but it stopped in midair before it touched Ashby's body. A vine suddenly sprang out from the ground and tightly wrapped around the beast's wrist. Ashby, who had been desperate, suddenly relaxed his expression. After hesitating for a while, he looked at Boner, who was also at a loss, not knowing why. At this time, the giant beast heard the sound of pa footsteps from behind. A figure was walking from a distance behind the giant beast and stopped more than 10 meters away from the giant beast. The angry giant beast opened its mouth slightly, revealing its sharp fangs. Its one-eyed eyeball slid to the corner of its eye, as if it had seen Li Ming's position, but its body did not move at all, and it did not even twist its head. Li Ming's sensing ability was naturally also cautiously perceiving all dangers. His body surface had long been wrapped in white electric light. Because he was under the cover of the dark red electric arc of the giant beast, Li Ming had to use the armor formed by electromagnetic waves to protect his body. After all, Li Ming did not want to make the same mistake as Ashby and Boner. The beast's hand, which was entangled by vines, suddenly clenched into a fist, and then swung it vigorously. The vines were directly broken, and the fist hit Ashby again, but Li Ming had foreseen it. The ground under Boner's feet bulged upwards, and the black vines broke out of the ground, entangled Boner and stretched far away. The speed was so fast that it perfectly avoided the attack of the beast. The beast did not continue to chase, but turned around and looked at Li Ming, who was originally standing behind him. The one-eyed man looked Li Ming up and down, but a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth and said, "Isn't this the delicacy just now? You actually came to me." Li Ming looked calm, looked at the other party quietly, and replied, "This delicacy of mine. I'm afraid you are not lucky enough to enjoy it." In the words, the swords were drawn, and the momentum was fierce. A battle was about to begin. And Li Ming's knowledge about this beast has also increased a lot, and this increased knowledge comes from the beast illustration. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304, Can it be used? There is no detailed information about the record of the Turbo Beast in the Beast illustration book, but at the end of the introduction of the Beast illustration book, there is a note related to this beast, which elaborates on some research and speculation about this beast. Research and some speculations indicate that the Turbo Beast may come from another world, not our current universe. Moreover, all known Turbo Beasts were originally one, but this beast constantly creates clones, and those clones come to our universe through various channels, and then grow little by little, and become such a huge existence now. In other words, there is only one Turbo Beast, and the others are clones, but after the clones grow up, it is impossible to distinguish which is the main body, and which is the clone. In this speculation, Li Ming is more convinced that the Turbo Beast comes from another world, because this beast cannot see the level, but it is extremely powerful, and it is not like the giant beasts on the Silent Sacrifice Star, so the most likely species is from another world. This is why this little clone in front of him is so powerful. Of course, that is only for ordinary 9th level beasts, and aliens like Li Ming are naturally different. If he wants to leave the Croft Galaxy, he needs the Star Map Key. To get the Star Map Key, Li Ming needs the help of Ashby and Boner, so these two people cannot die. The clone giant beast's one eye has locked onto Li Ming at this moment. Just like a hunter seeing delicious prey, the corner of his mouth slightly raised, and his body suddenly moved. The black shadow flashed, and the giant beast had already approached Li Ming. The speed of the attack was astonishing, but with Li Ming's predictive ability, any move of the opponent was under control. When the giant beast was less than 1 meter away from Li Ming still stood there without moving, but the giant beast's lightning speed suddenly stopped, and it stopped in front of Li Ming, as if the picture was frozen, motionless. The golden mist kept floating around Li Ming's body, and in this golden mist, all speeds would be reduced. This golden mist is the magic shield, but after deeper training, the magic shield is no longer just presented in a solid form, but more diversified. The mist in front of us is one of the ways. It seems that the mist is just a gas, but it is fused with Li Ming's powerful energy, which makes the density and intensity of the golden mist reach the maximum. This golden mist. The giant beast's single eye swept around and immediately understood, but his expression was still very calm. Li Ming slowly raised his right hand and squeezed it hard. Suddenly, the golden mist around him quickly condensed, and in a few seconds, a golden rectangular block was formed in front of Li Ming. It was like a gold nugget, and the giant beast was firmly fixed in the gold nugget, as if it was frozen by the golden ice, but it was just a phantom. As the golden block formed, the expression of the giant beast also stayed at the last moment, unable to move at all. As the giant beast was restrained by the magic shield, the flickering dark red arc slowly disappeared, and the entire area returned to calm again. However, Li Ming did not stop there. He waved his right hand horizontally, and the action was like throwing something out of his hand. The golden light passed through Li Ming's arm, and a muffled sound of bang was heard, just like a match was struck. The entire golden light body actually burned. It was said to be burning, but it was actually the golden mist just now. These golden mists were very much like golden flames. While floating, they were also injected into the previous golden light rectangle little by little. Magic shield seal. Li Ming said lightly. As soon as the 4 words came out of his mouth, the golden light flame disappeared, leaving only a golden light rectangle, and this rectangle continued to shrink and condense, as if it was condensing little by little. After a few seconds, the 5 or 6 meter high golden light rectangle had shrunk to the size of a palm. Li Ming saw this, and smiled with satisfaction. He raised his right hand gently, and the gold nugget slowly fell into Li Ming's hand. Then he gently squeezed it, and the gold nugget disappeared. After doing all this, Li Ming turned his eyes, and looked at Boner and Asibi. The 2 of them were already stunned, their mouths opened wide, but they could not make a sound, and they did not know what to say. Li Ming smiled lightly and said, "Are you 2 okay?" Asibi just stared at Li Ming blankly, nodded his head, and did not say a word. Boner also nodded and smiled lightly. The grey items on the 2 people had gradually disappeared, and the stiffness of their bodies was also disappearing a little bit, but the 2 seemed to have forgotten all this, and still stood there blankly. It is no wonder that in front of Li Ming's absolute strength, they, who are also 9th level, can only feel ashamed and amazed. In ordinary 9th level civilizations, the cultural heritage and star cultivation are often the key to determining strength. Li Ming not only learned a variety of advanced star classes, but also possessed 3 civilizations, which is incomparable to ordinary 9th level civilizations. Looking at the 2 people in a daze, Li Ming smiled again and said, "The restraints on you should have disappeared." After these words came out, Boner's wife was the first to react. After moving her hands, she smiled lightly. The restraints on her body had indeed disappeared. After looking at Li Ming, she said, "It's a good thing you took action just now, otherwise our lives would be in danger." Ashby also smiled slightly at this moment, and then said, "That's right." Li Ming waved his hand quickly and replied, "I also rushed here, because I saw the strange phenomenon here, and I just happened to meet you. Since you are all safe, that's great." Boner's wife nodded slightly, her mood had completely calmed down. After looking at Li Ming again, she praised, "I thought you were just an alchemist, but I didn't expect you to have these means. Hancock recommended you back, which really made a great contribution to our craft. Now I must report it to the top management of Delanu in person." Ashby also smiled and nodded in agreement when he heard this. Li Ming just smiled and said nothing, but his eyes looking at Boner's eyes had a slight change, but his face was still calm. From Li Ming's insight, it was true that Boner's eyes were grateful to Li Ming, but she was more cautious and worried. After all, Li Ming, a guy who suddenly appeared, was so powerful that the other party was naturally worried. Compared with Boner's eyes, Asibi was much more sincere. In addition to gratitude to Li Ming, he did not have too many extra thoughts in his heart. Since the turbid clone has been eliminated, then let's do this. You go back to Agelina first. Asibi and I will go to the number 1 material warehouse to see if there is any loss, and then go back to arrange the matter of the alchemist. Boner's eyes said. Li Ming smiled slightly, glanced at the 2 of them, and said, "Okay, then I will wait for your instructions in Agelina." Having said that, Li Ming really turned around and left. Watching Li Ming's figure gradually going away, Ashby breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Fortunately this person showed up, otherwise, you and I would be in real danger this time." Boner nodded slightly, but after smiling, his face immediately darkened, and he said, "It's true that this person saved you and me, but since such a powerful person suddenly came, we must inform Lord Bridges of Delano Star." Having said so, Boner sighed again, turned around, and walked towards the material warehouse, saying, "Let's go and see if there is any major loss first." Ashby didn't say much, turned around and followed Boner. At this time, the number 1 material warehouse was in a mess, and many 7th level soldiers were busy cleaning up, but in a wide hall, 2 8th level captains were pacing back and forth anxiously, with a worried look on their faces. At this moment, the portal of the room suddenly flashed, and Boner and Ashby walked in together. As soon as they saw the two, all the 7th rank soldiers and 8th rank captains bowed and saluted. Boner casually waved her hand, not caring at all. She glanced at everyone, and finally stopped at the 2 8th rank soldiers. "What's the situation here?" Boner stared at an 8th rank soldier and asked. The 8th rank soldier did not answer immediately, but had a panic expression on his face. After glancing at the 8th rank soldier next to him, he still said tremblingly, "The damage to the building is a bit serious, but it is being repaired. There is no loss of materials, but the only remaining Huayu is gone." Chapter 305 Laboratory. "What did you say? Huayu is missing?" Ashby suddenly shouted angrily. The 2 8th rank soldier shrank back and shuddered with fear at the shout. Ashby was about to scold him again, but Boner raised his hand to block Ashby, glanced at the 2 8th rank captains and other 7th rank soldiers in front of him, and said, "Go and have a closer look to see if anything else is missing. This place has nothing to do with you." "Yes." Everyone bowed their heads and left. Ashby still had a frown on his face. After a cold snort, he glanced at Boner's body and said, "Boner, are we going to bypass them like this? The one who is missing is Huayu." Boner's expression was solemn, as if he was thinking of something else. He said, "Can Huayu be found by blaming them? Besides, you also saw that the powerful Zulan clone was subdued by the new guy in one move. Shouldn't we think about him?" Ashby's expression suddenly changed, as if he suddenly thought of something, and blurted out, "You mean, that guy took the opportunity to steal Huayu?" Boner smiled lightly, shook his head slightly, and said, "That's not the case. The information that Huayu stored here is very confidential. How could he, a new outsider, know it?" Ashby became a little confused when he heard this. He frowned slightly, and asked in confusion, "Then, what do you mean?" Boner sighed deeply, hesitated for a moment, and said, "This person is too powerful, and he is also proficient in alchemy. What I mean is this. Take this person around first, learn about our alchemy, find out his background, and see where he comes from, and whether he can be used by us. After all, most people are unwilling to make the elixirs we ask them to make. And I will go to Delano Star in person to report this matter to the top management. If this person is not a problem and can replace Agelina, we will save a lot of trouble. As for the loss of Huayu, I believe the top management will not pursue it too much." Boner continued. Ashby nodded repeatedly, his eyes moved slightly, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said, "Well, in this case, it is a good result for us." Boner took a deep breath and continued, "Let the top management suppress this person, and it will be much easier to resist the turbid clone in the future." "Okay, I'll go find him," Ashby replied with satisfaction and left quickly. At this time, in the alchemy room of the huge building, Agelina was hesitant and restless, walking back and forth, and occasionally looking at the seat not far away with her old eyes. Li Ming sat there quietly without saying a word, as if thinking about something. After the previous conversation with Li Ming, Agelina was already afraid, and hated Li Ming, so she was always uneasy and fidgeting. After all, if it was really as Li Ming said, then she would really be in danger, but she was not willing to just let this newcomer do whatever he wanted. After a while, a light flashed on the portal, and Ashby walked out of it, and walked quickly to the depths of the alchemy room. At this time, Ashby's eyes had changed when he looked at Agelina. He glanced at her slightly, and his attention was focused on Li Ming, who was sitting quietly not far away. The originally serious expression on his face immediately eased, and he slowly walked towards Li Ming. This change was only a slight expression, but to a Jelena, it seemed to be a world of difference, because before Li Ming arrived, this Asabi was still respectful to her. Sensing Asabi's figure approaching, Li Ming also stood up and smiled. Asabi looked Li Ming up and down, and said, "After consultation with Bona, I decided to take you to our experimental area first. As an alchemist, you can also understand the situation here." Li Ming smiled and nodded, and replied, "Okay." With that, the two left here and walked outside, but from the conversation to the departure, they did not look at Jelena, which made Jelena suddenly more panicked, because the experimental area, that is a place she should often go, but now, she seems to have been completely ignored. Seeing that the two were about to leave the house, Jelena hesitated for a while and said, "Warden Ashby, then I." Ashby paused, glanced back at him, and replied casually, "Wait here." After that, Ashby took Li Ming away from the portal, leaving Jelena standing there worriedly, looking at the two with unwilling eyes, her eyes slightly moving, as if she was thinking of some countermeasures. No, if it's really what that kid said, I can't just sit there and wait for death. I must find a way to get rid of him. Thinking so in her heart, her face was full of viciousness. Leaving the huge building, Ashby took Li Ming on a small spaceship and flew away, heading to the depths of the fog. Li Ming sat quietly behind him, looking Ashby up and down with his eyes, and began to explore the information related to the star map key with his wisdom eyes. Under his wisdom eyes, Li Ming did find some content about the star map key. The one-way star map key to the central system is not available on the entire Bergson planet, only on the Delanu planet, and that thing has always been carried by a high-level person named Bridges. Bridges is the station master of the entire Croft prison system, the highest existence here, a first-level civilization. Just this information alone made Li Ming's heart half cold. There is no doubt that it is basically a fool's dream to want to see something from a first-level civilization. This is undoubtedly the biggest obstacle for Li Ming to leave here. Just as Li Ming was exploring, the small spacecraft had begun to enter the fog. At this time, Ashby raised his hand and took out a pill. It was the anti-smog pill that Li Ming had refined before. After swallowing it in one gulp, he turned his head and looked at Li Ming. His right hand flipped again, and her anti-smog pill refined by Jelena was taken out. While handing it to Li Ming, he said, "We are about to enter the fog area. You should take this anti-smog pill." Li Ming looked at the inferior pill, raised his hand to take it, hesitated for a moment, and finally opened his mouth to swallow it. The pills refined by Jelena are naturally not comparable to those refined by Li Ming, but there is not much difference in efficacy, only in time. For those who are in the poisonous fog, the timeliness of the pills is naturally the key. The spaceship flew in the fog for a while, and then arrived above a huge building. Although the hazy fog affected the vision, the general appearance of the building below was still very clear. This is a huge cube building. The surface of the building is all black. This black is very eye-catching, like a large black mirror, and it is flickering with a faint light even in the fog. This building is 100 meters long and wide, and only 4 or 5 meters high. The style is very special, but Li Ming knows that this is the prison in the Chinese civilization. Speaking of the prison, Li Ming is actually a little curious. The spaceship began to slowly descend until it stopped 4 or 5 meters above the building. The building directly below was slightly squirming, and beams of blue light shot out from it. The blue light was below the small spaceship and wrapped it. After a few seconds, the small spaceship disappeared in the blue light. When the hatch of the spacecraft opened, Li Ming had already arrived at a huge underground space. It was empty and circular. The only thing he could see was the flashing portal on the wall in the distance. Ashby walked towards one of the portals skillfully, saying, "Come here." Li Ming did not respond. He continued to look around before following. After passing through the portal, he came to another circular space, but it was much smaller than the previous one. Strangely, the portal was located in the middle of this room. As soon as Li Ming walked out of the portal, he looked around. While looking at it, Li Ming's expression became more shocked, and his mouth opened slightly, revealing a surprised look. "This is the elixir laboratory." As an alchemist of craft, this will be a place you often go in and out in the future. Let's get to know it first. Ashby introduced beside Li Ming. Li Ming still did not respond, but his eyes were already overwhelmed, and he was completely attracted by the situation here. Chapter 306. Frankly speaking, I can't stand it. The four walls of the circular room were covered with blue screens, more than 20 in total. The images on each screen showed the prisoners here, wearing prison uniforms. Any action they took in the cage would be monitored. Below the screen was a laboratory table and a transmission port. On the laboratory table were the nebula cauldron and medicinal materials, and the transmission port was not sure where it corresponded to. Turning his eyes left and right, Li Ming's consciousness had spread out. With his eyes narrowed, he understood what this place was used for, based on what he saw, and the information in Ashby's mind. This was a laboratory, and all the medicinal pills here were made for some fixed experimental targets, such as some medicinal pills that could instantly enhance combat effectiveness, and some medicinal pills that could stimulate the body's ultimate potential. These experiments were obviously dark and extreme, because such medicinal pills often brought great side effects to the users, and the prisoners on the screen naturally became the experimental subjects. Li Ming had learned about such evil experiments from a Jelena through his eyes before, but it was still a bit shocking to see it with his own eyes. No wonder the laboratory is set up in this fog. It turns out that they are doing some shameful things. Li Ming said to himself, full of disgust for these things. But Ashby on the side still said very proudly, the pill refining and experimental results here are extremely important to the entire Chinese civilization. So, before you become an alchemist here, you still have to understand it. Li Ming did not hide his disgust for these institutions. His expression was very ugly, and after glancing at the prisoners, his eyes returned to Ashby. He opened his mouth slightly and said, "What if I refuse?" Hehe. Ashby chuckled and replied, "I know your strength, but there are some things I might as well tell you frankly. The Croft Galaxy is not a place where anyone can come in and go out as they please. You should be very clear about this. Lord Bridges on the planet Delanu is a first-level civilization. No matter how powerful you are, can you be his opponent?" Ashby smiled very confidently and continued, "This is why I'm so confident to bring you directly to the laboratory. You only have two choices. One is to be an alchemist here peacefully, otherwise, you will be killed." Li Ming was stunned when he heard this. When it comes to the first-level civilization, Li Ming still has lingering fears. His expression did not change at the moment. He did not directly refute the other party. Instead, he smiled slightly and walked towards one of the experimental tables. Although Li Ming did not show any sign of rejection, Ashby's expression relaxed after seeing Li Ming's smile, and he continued, "Since you have come here, why not just stay here and be a good alchemist? Living is worse than dying." Li Ming still did not reply, but nodded. Li Ming listened to the other party's words, but did not show much reaction. He took a piece of starbook on the experimental table in his right hand, and said while watching, "It is naturally better to be alive than to die, but, if you can live better, wouldn't it be better?" Li Ming lived like this, and the starbook in his hand had been read through. However, after reading it, Li Ming's face suddenly became even uglier, and his eyes kept staring at the thing in his hand, as if the content in the starbook was playing in his mind. This starbook records the reactions of the experimental subjects after taking the drugs. It can be said that with the development of these pills, a large number of aliens have died in this experiment. From Li Ming's point of view, this has nothing to do with Li Ming, but Li Ming was very disgusted after watching it. He immediately clenched his palm and put the starbook away. This little action was also seen by Ashby, whose face changed slightly, and his eyes were fixed on Li Ming. Li Ming slowly turned around, smiled coldly, snorted, shook his head slightly, and said, "To be honest, what you do has nothing to do with me, and I don't want to care about these things, because I always know that, even if I do such a good thing, it won't bring me anything, but I just can't stand it. So, I instinctively want to do something that you don't like," Li Ming said casually. But when Ashby heard these words, his expression changed immediately, and his eyes didn't dare to leave Li Ming's body at all, and he said, "What do you want to do?" Li Ming's calm expression seemed very natural. but Ashby became very nervous. I might as well tell you that the reason why I saved you and Boner in the #1 material warehouse was to use you to get the star map key to the central system, but now it seems that there is no hope. It doesn't matter. After Boner comes back, it will be good for me to get the star map key to return to the outer system. After all, my purpose of coming here has been achieved. Li Ming continued to speak, staring at the other person motionlessly. Being stared at by Li Ming like this, and listening to what Li Ming said, CB had already realized that the situation was not good. Li Ming didn't care. After gently spreading his hands, he said, I have said so much, you should say a few words too, such as, a last words or something. CB's eyes widened instantly, his teeth clenched tightly together, his angry face was full of vicious expressions, and he waved his right hand, and pulled out the blue light sword. But at the moment, when the opponent drew out the blue sword, Li Ming's palm quickly raised and grabbed the opponent. It seemed to be a grab in the air, but several vines grew out from under Ashby's feet and entangled him at once, making him unable to move at all. After confirming that the opponent could not resist, Li Ming retracted his right hand, but white light began to flash on his palm. It was electromagnetic waves. Li Ming looked around and said, let's destroy this laboratory together. As he said this, he aimed his right hand at the wall on one side and swung it out. Boom. A loud noise was heard, and dust and gravel immediately spread, directly submerging the entire space. Li Ming began to demolish the laboratory, but Li Ming did not know that an unexpected crisis was quietly approaching. In the space outside the Bergson planet, a round spaceship suddenly appeared after a flash. It was just teleported from a distance. In the main cabin of the spaceship, an alien with a pineapple head was looking at the operating table in front of him. At this time, Adriana's figure appeared on the operating table like the surface of the water. Adriana looked at the pineapple-headed alien solemnly and said with a serious face, Bridges, I want him alive. This person is very important to me. I must catch him alive. The pineapple-headed alien named Bridges smiled disdainfully and said, Adriana, watch your tone. Even the station master of your space station dare not talk to me like this. You and your sister are very different in this respect. The Croft Galaxy has its own rules. Maybe I will leave a body for you. You wait at the entrance of the outer system. I have arrived at Bergson Star and the body will be sent to you soon. Bridges said coldly. Adriana's face changed slightly, but facing an existence of the same level as her upper level, she was still helpless. Bridges snorted coldly and closed the connection casually. He turned his eyes to Boner's side and said, Boner, contact Ashby and confirm the location. Boner's face was full of strange colors. After hesitating for a while, he replied, I have tried to contact Ashby before, but failed. Huh. Bridges suddenly showed an unhappy expression. Boner was shocked and said again, but I contacted Angelina, and Angelina said they went to the laboratory, so we should just wait outside. What? Laboratory? They actually brought this guy into the laboratory? Bridges was furious, and his body moved with it, as if he was going to vent his anger on Boner. Boner quickly lowered his head and shrank back, not daring to say anything more. But after a few seconds, Bridges' anger subsided again. After a slight sigh of relief, he said, well, anyway, this kid is a dying man. It doesn't matter if he knows something. Chapter 307, Bridges arrives. Deep in the fog of the Bergson planet, a small spaceship was slowly taking off. Right below the spaceship was a ruined area, as if it had just been through a war. The original square building had completely collapsed and was in ruins, no longer in its original appearance. The pilot of this small spaceship was Li Ming, and the masterpiece below was also made by Li Ming. Whoosh, the sound of braking through the air sounded, and the spaceship quickly passed through the air and disappeared directly into the fog. Now Li Ming's plan has completely changed. He gave up entering the central system from the Croft system. After seeing Boner, he would take back his star map key from her and return to the outer system. With this plan, Li Ming's spaceship had already headed straight for the giant building. There were fixed coordinates between the giant building and the experimental area, which also made the travel between them unaffected by the fog. After a while, the giant building appeared in front of him, but there was an additional spaceship above the giant building. This spaceship was round, which was not there before Li Ming entered the fog. Its sudden appearance at this time also made Li Ming's eyes brighten, and he thought to himself, could it be that Boner is back? If it was really Boner, Li Ming would naturally have to take back the star map key and return to the outer system. With this plan, Li Ming drove the spaceship slowly down in front of the giant building. As the hatch opened, Li Ming walked down from the spaceship. However, as soon as Li Ming stepped down from the spaceship, Boner came out of the portal of the giant building. When he saw that it was really Boner, Li Ming also smiled slightly. However, after a few seconds, Li Ming's smile suddenly faded. It was because he noticed a little abnormality, and his slightly narrowed eyes had already had the ability of a wise eye. Why are you alone? Where is Ashby? Boner said sternly with a serious look. Li Ming said nothing. His eyes suddenly trembled slightly, and the muscles on his face twitched. Bridges? Li Ming suddenly cried out in surprise. It was through his wisdom eyes that he saw from Boner that Bridges had arrived. As soon as he pronounced the name, a huge figure suddenly fell from the sky. This was beyond Li Ming's prediction, and it was impossible to avoid it. Boom. A loud noise was heard. The power was like a bomb exploding. Airwaves and smoke swept around in an instant. Circles of waves continued to ripple. The speed of the waves was so fast that they reached 1,000 meters away in an instant, and the entire range was affected. Boner, who was far away, quickly raised his hands to resist the wind and waves. He felt a strong wind hitting him, and a quick wind sound flashed by his ears. After a few seconds, it returned to calm. Looking at the center of the explosion, it was still covered with dust. Such a strong and powerful attack made Boner also amazed, but Boner soon showed a proud look. It must be that Li Ming was dead under this blow. The dust gradually dissipated, and the scene became clear. At this time, the place was already a large pit with a diameter of tens of meters, but only Bridges was standing in the pit, and Li Ming was nowhere to be seen. Boner frowned and showed a strange expression. Bridges also turned his eyes around and showed an abnormal expression, but after a few seconds, Bridges suddenly opened his eyes and looked into the distance. Over there. As soon as the three words came out of his mouth, his feet suddenly exerted force, and he was ejected like a rocket taking off at high speed. Li Ming had just used his teleportation ability in an emergency, so he was able to avoid it. Although he had quickly flown to the direction of the fog after teleporting away, he was still noticed by Bridges. Fuck. It's coming again. Li Ming opened his mouth in horror. Compared to before, Li Ming was more alert this time, because the opponent attacked suddenly, and Li Ming was not prepared at all. However, Li Ming could see that, if the attack hit Li Ming, he would be dead. After all, Bridges was not Adriana, who only used 1/10 of her strength to fight you. The ability of teleportation can be activated instantly to change its position, or it can be activated with power. The difference is that the position of instant activation is random and the distance is short, but it can save life, and the power activation can reach a longer distance. In a hurry, Li Ming's instant teleportation did not run too far, but it was enough for Li Ming to ease the passive situation. At this time, as soon as his eyes saw Bridges, Li Ming understood that the opponent's attack was about to get close. Without teleportation and unable to dodge, Li Ming could only take Bridges' second attack. As soon as he waved his right hand, the purple vine appeared. It was the 9th level Stardust weapon, the Vine Demon. As soon as he made a move, the vine quickly expanded and grew. The top of the vine split from one into more than a dozen, interlaced and woven to form a sphere. The Vine Demon's vine turned into a vine ball and blocked in front of Li Ming, but Li Ming knew that this was far from enough. The golden mist spread along the vine and wrapped the vine ball. Li Ming's right hand turned again, and a metal capsule appeared. It was the capsule armor, just like Iron Man in the movie, completely wrapping Li Ming. At the same time, electromagnetic armor and star furnace shields appeared on the surface of the body. In short, everything that could be used for protection was put on Li Ming. Despite so many layers of defense, Li Ming still frowned and looked nervous, with beads of cold sweat flowing down his forehead. Here it comes. Li Ming exclaimed. His nerves tensed instantly. He saw a black dot flashing in the distance. The next moment, Bridges' figure had come to the front of Li Ming. The surface of the huge fist was flashing with white light, as if it was not a fist that was waving, but a sun. As the figure approached, an unprecedented pressure pressed directly on the whole body, and even breathing was very difficult. Bang! Bridges' fist hit the center of the rattan ball, and suddenly a dazzling white light was dazzling. The light ball on the surface of the fist turned into a laser and instantly pierced through the vines wrapped in golden light. At the same time, the vine magic rattan ball was ignited by the white light like a piece of paper, and turned into ashes bit by bit. The white light then broke through Li Ming's star furnace shield and electromagnetic armor, and directly hit the capsule armor on Li Ming's body. Every time it passed through a defense, a circle of white ripples spread out in a circle. At the same time, the white light was weakened by layers of defense, but it still hit Li Ming. Under the multi-layer defense, the capsule armor blocked the last attack for Li Ming. The white light did not penetrate Li Ming's body. The energy exploded on the surface of the capsule armor. Li Ming only felt a huge thrust pushing his body quickly to the distance. Before he felt any pain, he flew out dizzy. From a distance, Li Ming looked like a bullet that had just flown out of the barrel of a gun. He disappeared in the distant fog in a flash. Bridges showed a surprised expression, slowly retracted his fist, and looked into the distance. Li Ming's body had long disappeared. The fog in the distance was like a vast ocean, covering a large area of Bergson star, and Li Ming was like a small fish, falling into it and disappearing. After Bridges hesitated for a while, he moved and flew into the fog. The fog area is an unknown area, and it is also a turbid area of Warcraft. Anyone in it will lose their way. The thick fog not only blocks the vision, but also makes it impossible to explore even with the technology of some scientific and technological civilizations. Bridges just flew in the direction where Li Ming was flying, but once he entered the fog, he could not see anything due to the blurred vision, so he could only fly continuously. After flying straight into the depths of the fog for a while, Bridges' figure suddenly stopped. At this time, a huge deep pit appeared on the ground below him. He stared at the position of the deep pit and slowly lowered the altitude of his flight. He stopped only when he was several meters above the deep pit. He looked at the bare deep pit with his eyes, and his face suddenly became ugly. Sure enough, it's not an ordinary 9th level. How can it withstand my attack? Talking to himself, Bridges' eyes began to look in all directions. Because there was no figure of Li Ming in the deep pit, it meant that Li Ming was still alive. For a 1st level civilization, letting a 9th level escape from its hands is an unspeakable shame. Chapter 308, The True Form of the Turbid Beast. After staying there quietly for a while, Bridges turned around and flew out of the fog. After leaving the fog and returning to the place outside the fog, Bridges flew towards the giant building. At this time, the flying speed was very slow, and he seemed to be thinking about something under his silent eyes. Because in the fog, you need to use the anti-haze pill. After all, there is not a separate clone in the fog. There is a lot of poisonous gas, and it is also very likely to encounter the main body of the turbidity in the fog. If you encounter the main body of the turbidity, even if it is a 1st level civilization, it will be very dangerous. Considering all factors, Bridges can only choose to temporarily withdraw from this place. Boner also saw Bridges' return figure, looking at the sky with a smile on his face. Just when he was about to step forward, his smile suddenly fell, because Boner found that Bridges' face did not look good. This made Boner frown, and dared not approach. Arriving above the giant building, Bridges glanced at Boner below, then looked at the circular spaceship in the sky, and moved towards the spaceship. At the same time, Li Ming was walking slowly along the ground in the fog. At this time, the armor on Li Ming's body had been broken and fell off, and there was a bloody wound on his body, and blood was constantly flowing out. Bridges' attack just now penetrated the armor and hit Li Ming's body. Although it was not fatal, it also caused Li Ming to suffer from pain. After walking in the fog for a while, a tall boulder appeared dimly in front of him. This boulder was arched, like a bridge. Li Ming looked around, and then came to the bottom of the boulder, and slowly sat down. Taking a deep breath, Li Ming took out a pill and swallowed it. When he was on the Star of Silent Sacrifice, Li Ming refined the materials on his body into a lot of pills, including pills for restoring the body, which were just right for use at this time. After swallowing the pill, Li Ming focused his eyes and activated the ability of the biological civilization light medicine. He saw the wound flashing green light, which was healing little by little. The injury was not too serious, and it would be healed, as long as it took some time. At this time, Li Ming had to be vigilant to prevent bridges from entering the fog and finding him, but the probability of this was not high, so Li Ming was not too worried, but just tried to be on guard around. But just as Li Ming was healing his body, the sky above his head suddenly rolled with clouds and fog, and the fog began to gather towards the center, and a large black cloud slowly appeared. The concentration of this dark cloud was much higher than the concentration of the surrounding fog, and it also contained huge energy. The dark cloud was dozens of miles long and wide, covering the entire sky, and there was no end in sight, and these dark clouds were constantly rolling and rolling, like freshly boiled water. Such an amazing vision made Li Ming below suddenly open his eyes and look up at the sky. This strange astronomical phenomenon made Li Ming stand up slowly and temporarily stopped healing his wounds. He looked at the sky with his mouth slightly open and whispered, "What the hell is this?" Li Ming was whispering, and the dark clouds suddenly began to lower their height, pressing down on the ground. As the dark clouds pressed down, the powerful energy also pressed directly to the ground. Li Ming felt his body tightened, as if he was even in water, and his movements became a little difficult. His eyes narrowed slightly, and Li Ming frowned. After watching the dark clouds that kept pressing down for a few seconds, Li Ming was suddenly startled, and his eyes widened a little. Could it be the body of the turbid beast? Li Ming couldn't help but say these words. As soon as the voice fell, the dark cloud was only a dozen meters above the ground, and Li Ming was about to be swallowed by it. Li Ming knew the power of the turbid beast. This beast was also very likely to come from another world. The creatures in the other world were not something that Li Ming's world could understand, and its powerful strength was not something that ordinary civilizations could contend with. Li Ming was already trembling with fear just by looking at the gradually approaching dark clouds. This fear was like death was about to come, with no place to hide or escape. After a few seconds, the rolling dark clouds were only a few seconds away from Li Ming. Once swallowed, he would be dead. In a hurry, Li Ming suddenly raised his hand, facing the dark clouds in the sky with his palm, and shouted loudly, "Wait." With a shout, the dark clouds actually stopped. The dark clouds rolled over Li Ming's head, and did not continue to fall down. After a few seconds, a face appeared in the rolling dark clouds. This face was not unfamiliar. It was the face of the clone of the turbid giant beast that Li Ming had seen before. The original body and the clone were exactly the same. Do you have any last words? He opened and closed his mouth and said these words. Li Ming hesitated for a moment and said nothing. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Can you give me a way out?" The turbid beast was shocked when he heard this, but soon smiled disdainfully and said, "You can make this request, which shows that you still have great courage, but I refuse." As soon as the voice fell, the dark clouds suddenly fell quickly. The dark clouds that seemed to be dark were just gas, but once you were in it, it was as if you were bound by some force. What's more terrifying is not these. Under the erosion of the dark clouds, the energy in Li Ming's body was rapidly lost, as if it was being extracted by some force, and the speed of this extraction was several times faster than the stomach wall of the silent sacrifice star giant beast. This is also the way the turbid beast obtains energy. Through the spread of fog, it extracts and absorbs any energy-rich objects and life forms, and squeezes them dry. And under the restraint of its powerful ability, there is almost no room for struggle. The pain of the energy being extracted immediately spread throughout the body. In just a few seconds, Li Ming's consciousness began to blur, and death seemed to have come. "I can help you. I can help you return to the other world." Li Ming shouted with all his strength in a hurry. After he finished shouting, the dark clouds suddenly stopped absorbing Li Ming's energy, which made Li Ming's body relax. His body floated slowly in the dark clouds like cotton. At this time, a ferocious face formed in the dark clouds in front of Li Ming. "What did you just say?" The single eye of the turbid beast looked at Li Ming coldly. Li Ming was already weak and dizzy at this time, which was the symptom of a large loss of energy. He opened his mouth, looked at the ferocious face in front of him, and said, I can send you back to the other world." This time, when he heard Li Ming's words, a faint smile appeared at the corners of Zhuo Lang's mouth. His one eye blinked and said, "Tell me, how are you going to send me to the other world?" After Li Ming took 2 deep breaths. He said, I can use dark energy to open a wormhole leading to the other world. Through the wormhole, you can return to the other world. Zhuolang Beast nodded with satisfaction, his eyeballs slightly turning in his one eye. He was already thinking about something and seemed to have some interest in Li Ming. Seeing this, Li Ming relaxed. The turbo beast behaved like this, and it was obvious that Li Ming was not in danger for the time being. Taking advantage of this moment, Li Ming hurriedly said again, but I need some time, because my body cannot open the wormhole now, so I need some time to recover my body. The turbo beast smiled, stared at Li Ming quietly for a moment, and said, okay, I will give you enough time. I have been here for thousands of years, so I don't need this little time. When you are ready, you can respond to me at any time. But during this period of time, you can't leave the fog, otherwise. Although the turbo beast did not finish speaking, the meaning it wanted to express was expressed in its ferocious expression. After the voice, the dark clouds began to fly high in the sky and dissipated little by little, gradually diluted in the fog and disappeared. At this time, looking at the fog around, everything was normal, as if nothing had happened. As the dark clouds dissipated, Li Ming's body fell back to the ground, and his body and mind breathed a sigh of relief. However, being in the fog, he always felt that the turbo beast was everywhere, which made Li Ming's nerves unable to relax completely. He saved his life temporarily, but it was obviously not a long-term solution. Li Ming turned around and walked away, and began to think about countermeasures in his mind. There was no direction, no goal, just walking aimlessly, until a mountain appeared in front of him. Li Ming suddenly stopped. This mountain is more than 10 meters high, not big, and the whole is made of hard rock, as if it was carved out of rock. After years of erosion by the fog, this mountain is also full of potholes and caves. Li Ming's eyes quickly locked onto a cave entrance, and then he walked over quickly. The cave entrance is located on the mountainside, 2 meters long and wide, and it is pitch black inside, and nothing can be seen. After glancing inside at the door for a few times, Li Ming entered it. Chapter 309, Level 1 Civilization, Part 1. The cave is more than 10 meters deep, and the space at the end is relatively spacious. The fog here is relatively sparse, and the eyes can see all the items in the cave clearly. Several skeletons are lying in the corner of the cave. Judging from the shape of the bones, they look like the skeletons of some birds or flying beasts, but it doesn't matter anymore. This is now Li Ming's temporary residence. Li Ming casually found a flat ground to sit down. With a flip of his right hand, a nebula pill has emerged. After taking this pill, Li Ming calmed his mind again. When the body was completely relaxed, Li Ming's brain regained its calmness, but soon began to make various analyses of the current situation. Summoning a wormhole and sending the turbo beast back to the other world is naturally no problem, but after the turbo beast leaves, how can I get out? Li Ming whispered in his mouth. This is undoubtedly the problem that Li Ming will face. After all, Li Ming has experienced the power of bridges. The first level civilization in full strength fighting is not something Li Ming can deal with, but he can't get rid of the current situation. As he thought about it, Li Ming couldn't help but sigh, feeling that this time his nebula might really break apart. He looked up at the sky, at the top of the cave, and said to himself, could it be my journey of cosmic civilization? Is this the end? It was like he was asking himself, but also like he was helpless. As he said this in frustration, his right hand flipped and took out a star capsule. Because he was in the fog, Li Ming needed to see if there were any materials for refining the anti-haze pill. After all, most of them had been given to Boner. If there was no anti-haze pill, Li Ming would also be corroded by the poisonous fog in the fog. After all, the time limit of the pill he had taken before was almost over. Just as Li Ming was flipping the star capsule, an object was suddenly sensed by Li Ming. As soon as he sensed this thing, Li Ming's eyes suddenly widened a little, and his mind quickly associated a point. His eyes flashed with a strange light, and he kept staring at the star capsule in his hand. A few seconds later, Li Ming turned his right hand over, and the star capsule began to glow blue. Strips of light shot out from it, and the light flashed back and forth on the ground in front of Li Ming like the faint light of the scanning instrument. After the blue light, a huge black stone had emerged. This stone was more than 1 meter long and wide, and the surface was glowing, and sometimes it showed circles of rotating ripples. Variant star altar stone. Li Ming whispered to himself. Speaking of the origin of this star altar stone, we have to mention the star raider Tiran. When Li Ming was attacked while riding on Inkinaya's meteorite spaceship, the spaceship decomposed to avoid the attack. Li Ming drifted in the universe for a while in the decomposition cabin, and later encountered the Tiran Star Raider group. After entering their spaceship, Li Ming found this variant star altar stone in the opponent's storage cabin and collected it. This star altar stone is different from the ordinary star altar. It has a strong energy binding effect. Because the effect is too strong, it cannot be used as an ordinary star altar. This item is more powerful than the star altar and cannot be used for low level advancement, but its ability is less than that of the Huayu, and it is not enough to break through the bottleneck and enter the first level civilization. Looking at this item, Li Ming said inwardly, if you want to change the status quo, you can only advance to the first level civilization. Instead of sitting and waiting for death, why not give it a try? Damn it, since we are already here, why not give it a try? Damn, he said fiercely, and his heart was also determined. With a wave of his right hand, 3 flowing cloud powers and 2 Huayu floated out of the star capsule together. Among the 3 flowing cloud powers, 2 of them were synthesized by Li Ming using Beigi, and 100 nebula powers. Li Ming had already synthesized them when he was on the Star of Silence, and the other one was found by Li Ming from Xenozoi. Among the advanced materials in front of him, Li Ming only lacked 1 Huayu, so Li Ming had the idea of using the mutant star altar stone to replace Huayu. Looking at the many floating items in front of him, Li Ming's body was suddenly surrounded by green light, as if there was a green mist pouring out of his body. Along with the misty green smoke curtain, Li Ming's body slowly floated up from the ground until it stopped 1 foot above the mutant star altar stone. Then 2 golden discs began to rotate around Li Ming. They were the 2 brilliant moons, just like satellites orbiting the Earth. There was no rule, just rotating continuously. After doing this, Li Ming looked at the 3 pieces of flowing cloud power. The blue flowing cloud power floated in the air, like a blue nebula, and like a blue leaf. The streamer on the surface swam repeatedly. Watching quietly with his eyes, Li Ming did not make any move, but there was still a hint of strangeness in his eyes. Once the advancement began, it could not be stopped or stopped. Without sufficient preparation, this decision was still a little difficult for Li Ming. With a wave of his right hand, Li Ming's eyes were horizontal, and his expression was extremely serious. With the wave of his arm, the 3 flowing cloud powers flew to his eyes. He took a deep breath and slowly opened his mouth. The flowing cloud power was like 3 pieces of flowing water, entering Li Ming's mouth one after another. This power of flowing clouds is different from the power of nebulae. It is like drinking water. It feels like something is flowing down the throat. The whole body feels warm and comfortable. However, a few seconds later, a strong force begins to attack the abdomen. As soon as Li Ming feels this power, his face changes. His body pauses and falls on the star altar stone below. At the same time, the Huayu light that rotates around Li Ming's body shines brightly. The 2 plates release golden light like 2 round mirrors and completely wrap Li Ming in it. Huayu continues to rotate around Li Ming, and the golden light shines on Li Ming's body at 360 degrees without dead angles. These golden lights will suppress the violent nature of the power of flowing clouds, thereby buying time for the body to absorb energy. In the previous advancement, Li Ming used it step by step, but this time Li Ming has changed his mind and done it in one go. Not only Huayu, but also the star altar stone under him is also playing a role, helping Li Ming's body absorb energy little by little. In addition, Li Ming's body is no longer the same as before. Long-term use of the secret refinement pill has made Li Ming's body extremely strong. If not for this, Li Ming would not have swallowed 3 flowing cloud powers at once. However, it is just the beginning. The energy of the flowing cloud power has not yet fully exploded. This is also what Li Ming is most worried about. After all, the effect of the star altar stone is not as good as the bright moon. I don't know if it can hold up for a while. Just when Li Ming was worried, the 3 flowing cloud powers in his body suddenly burst, like a dam suddenly bursting, and all the energy instantly swam all over his body. Li Ming's expression was already a little ugly. The feeling of expansion filled every cell in his body. He felt that he was constantly expanding, and it was an uncontrollable expansion. This feeling was only a feeling inside the body, and there was no change on the surface of the body. As this feeling came, 3 colors of light began to gather on Li Ming's head. Those were the 3 civilizations that Li Ming possessed. The light swam out of Li Ming's body in soft lines, and then gathered on Li Ming's head, and formed a 3-color light ball on Li Ming's head. Blue, green, blue. 3 colors of light flowed out of Li Ming's body one by one, looking very mysterious. But Li Ming's face began to twitch slightly, and his body became more and more stiff. The energy was reaching the limit of his body. With Li Ming's current body, it was not a problem to absorb this energy, but if Huayu did not assist the body to absorb it, the body would still not be able to bear it. Sure enough, TMD is still a little bit unable to hold on. Li Ming gritted his teeth, and said fiercely in secret. At this moment, the 2 Huayus rotating around Li Ming were already trembling slightly in the air, and the Zington stone under the body was also making a squeaking sound. Obviously, these 2 things were also unable to hold on. Li Ming naturally noticed this. If these 3 things were broken because of the powerful energy, then Li Ming would immediately die on the spot. As time went on, the situation became more and more grim. If it continued like this, Li Ming would inevitably fail to advance and die. Li Ming had no other choice but to grit his teeth and hold on, but this kind of holding on was just a mental struggle without any real meaning, and it could not stop the deterioration of the situation. But at this critical moment, a red light suddenly flew out from the cloak behind Li Ming. Chapter 310, Level 1 Civilization, Part 2. After the red light circled around Li Ming's body, it came to the front of Li Ming. The light turned into starlight and dissipated. A figure appeared in front of Li Ming. It was more at this moment, was different from before. His body had grown to more than 1 meter long. Behind his buttocks was a long 7-color feather tail. There was also a gorgeous crown-shaped crystal block on his head. The feathers on his body were all 7-color light, like a rainbow, colorful. Because Li Ming refined a large number of beast spirit pills and beast soul pills on the Star of Silence, and also distributed these pills to Moore and Walker, the 2 beasts naturally changed after taking the pills. Moore's eyes showed a stern look, and he looked at Li Ming solemnly. A pair of wings suddenly opened from both sides of his body, like an open embrace. Then a huge phantom of a 7-color giant bird emerged. The phantom was extremely huge, filling the entire cave, and it made the same movements as Moore. A pair of eyes slightly widened, and the 7-color light instantly became brighter. The wings of the phantom giant bird then retracted, like an open hand holding something. This action was to hold Li Ming in his arms. As a star beast, Moore itself has the function of assisting advancement, but the auxiliary function is limited, which Li Ming also knows. When Li Ming was advancing on Fuller Star, he had received assistance from Moore. Because of the lack of auxiliary power, Moore's ability seemed a bit useless, and Li Ming did not expect the other party to assist him in unlimited advancement, but now it seems that this useless ability has indeed played a huge role. The originally trembling Huayu returned to normal, and the star altar stone under him stopped trembling. The pain in his body gradually eased. After growing up, Moore's ability has indeed increased a lot. If it had not appeared in time, Li Ming might be in danger. At the same time as Li Ming was advancing, Bridges was talking to Adriana in the main cabin of a circular spaceship above the giant building outside the fog. Bridges, what do you mean by seemingly dead? You said before that you would give me the body. Why do you change your mind now? Adriana was a little angry and continued, this is not my personal matter, nor is it the matter of Station Master McCree, but it is related to the entire Chinese civilization. Millicent of the Canis Major Galaxy has always been thinking about this person. If we can't hand him over, it will be very troublesome. Bridges looked solemn, his eyes full of anger, and he looked at Adriana with some impatience. After a cold snort, he replied, don't worry, no one can escape from my hands. Whether dead or alive, I will definitely hand her over to you. Just wait. Having said so, Bridges then closed the connection. As the console returned to normal, Bridges immediately showed a ferocious look and whispered to himself, you think you are McCree's men and you are pointing fingers at me. Just as he was indignant, the console suddenly flashed with ripples, showing a place on the Bergson star. Bridges immediately turned his eyes away, looked carefully, frowned, and whispered, "What is this?" Just when he was puzzled, a message came from the console. Bridges then lightly clicked it, and the picture of Boner appeared. Station Master Bridges, deep in the fog area, there is a strange phenomenon. Boner said anxiously. Huh? Bridges suddenly became confused, rolled his eyes a few times, turned around, and walked out. Through the spacecraft, Bridges' figure came to the sky outside. Standing high in the sky, looking far away, he saw that there was indeed a strange phenomenon in the depths of the fog. In the depths of the fog was constantly rolling. The fog only existed a few thousand meters above the ground in the sky, but a huge group of fog had broken through that height, just like a spring suddenly gushing out of the calm water, constantly surging and rolling. What is there? Is it the movement of the turbid beast? Bridges stared at the area and whispered. The next moment, the ground suddenly trembled slightly, as if there was an earthquake. The amplitude of the vibration was not large, but the sense was very clear. At this moment, deep below the rolling fog, Li Ming was concentrating with his eyes closed in a cave. However, the two brilliant moons that were originally rotating around him had disappeared, and only some fragments were left on the ground, like a plate broken on the ground. Not far in front of Li Ming, a colorful bird was lying on the ground, breathing with its mouth open. Its tongue was hanging out of its mouth, and its eyes were wide and round, and it looked exhausted. The star altar stone under Li Ming had turned into a pile of dust, just like a piece of coal that was fully burned, with only ashes left. At this time, a three-color energy ball was floating above Li Ming's head. This ball was not big, only the size of a football, and appeared in the form of a virtual shadow. The surface was flashing, and the three colors of green, blue, and blue swam back and forth in it, like pieces of liquid. However, this energy ball created a daunting celestial phenomenon. With this place as the center, all the clouds in the sky were rotating around a central point, just like a huge vortex suddenly appeared in the sky. It was just huge, covering the entire sky, as if the sky above was not Bergson's, but a real rotating galaxy, and below the vortex was the rolling fog. From the ground to the rolling fog thousands of meters high, and then to the vortex airflow 10,000 meters high, their centers were vertical, and this celestial phenomenon was extremely rare. The experimental and interrogation agencies stationed on Bergson star for many years had never seen such a phenomenon. At this moment, all the aliens who saw this celestial phenomenon were already standing still, deeply attracted. From the 7th level soldiers to the 1st level civilization station masters, everyone opened their eyes wide. There was worry, doubt, and more fear, because in the cosmic civilization, the more bizarre the celestial phenomena, the more danger is coming. At this time, Li Ming still had his eyes closed, his expression tense and serious, and the three-color energy ball on his head was also slowly rotating, like a rotating planet. After a few seconds, the expression on Li Ming's face suddenly tightened, and his eyes suddenly opened. At the same time, the three-color energy ball entered Li Ming's body from the top of his head. Suddenly, a loud hum sounded. The earth trembled, and a circle of ripples and a beam of light shot out from Li Ming's body at the same time. The beam of light came out from the top of Li Ming's head, rushed out of the cave, broke through the rolling fog, and hit the center of the high-altitude vortex cloud, as if there was suddenly a beam of light between heaven and earth. And the circular ripple spread out with Li Ming as the center. The ripple was like a rapidly expanding white ring, without any destructive power, not even with wind, just a circle of breath. However, once this aura spread out, it expanded infinitely. This expansion was not only on the surface of Bergson star. After rushing out of Bergson star, it continued to expand in the Croft galaxy, stopping the spread of the entire Croft galaxy. From the perspective of space, it was as if Bergson star suddenly released a circle of aura and expanded to the edge of the Croft galaxy. Bridges, who had been standing high above the giant building, was penetrated by this aura. He did not feel too much abnormality, but his mind suddenly went blank. His eyes widened a few points, and his face was extremely ugly. This is the aura of a first-level civilization? Bridges muttered to himself in disbelief, and his solemn expression on his face was already looking at the place where the strange phenomenon occurred in the depths of the fog. After more than 10 seconds, the light column that shot straight into the sky suddenly dissipated and disappeared. The rotating cloud slowly stopped, and the fog stopped rolling. These amazing celestial phenomena disappeared bit by bit, as if everything was slowly returning to normal. Li Ming slowly stood up from the ground, his expression showing joy that could no longer be concealed. The corners of his mouth slightly raised, and he looked at his hands, then at his legs and feet. His eyes widened a little, and his trembling mouth could no longer contain the joy in his heart, and he opened his mouth and laughed. Ha 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 ha, a burst of ecstatic laughter. Damn it. I finally became a first-level civilization. A roar resounded throughout the cave, causing the mountain where Li Ming was to tremble slightly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311, sending you back to another world. His eyes moved slightly, and he took 2 steps forward to the front of Mer on the ground. He shook his right hand, and the cloak behind him flashed, and Mer was put into the beast cloud habitat. Then he stepped out of the cave. He walked along the cave to the entrance, and swept his eyes. A dark cloud was rolling above his head. Li Ming only took a quick look, and then fell into deep thought again. After a slight hesitation, he smiled slightly. The dark clouds rolled over, and came not far in front of Li Ming. In the rolling dark clouds, a single eye and the familiar and hideous face appeared again. It was the turbid beast. The appearance of the turbid beast was also due to the astronomical phenomenon here, but when it saw Li Ming, it still showed a bit of surprise. Without waiting for the turbid beast to say anything, Li Ming took the lead and said, "Now, it's time to send you back to the other world." The turbid beast paused after hearing this, and the originally surprised look immediately subsided, and replied seriously, "Then let's start." Li Ming then slowly raised his right hand. A slight smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and then the 5 fingers of his right hand suddenly clenched hard. This clench was just the bending of the 5 fingers, not really clenched into a fist. The black electric light kept flashing between the 5 fingers, which was the dark energy. Then he suddenly raised his hand, and pointed it at the sky. Suddenly, powerful black arcs jumped around, flowing and tumbling, with an imposing manner. A huge black electric net has formed above his head, just like Li Ming's operation on the alien planet. The difference is that Li Ming is now more relaxed and at ease using this ability. These dark energies are also the only dark energies that Li Ming has left, but Li Ming does not want to provoke creatures from the other world, so sending this turbid beast back to the other world is not a bad thing for Li Ming. Seeing that Li Ming really opened the wormhole, the turbid beast was somewhat surprised, and smiled slightly, and the black cloud rolled away. The turbid beast did not enter the wormhole immediately, but first looked at Li Ming with its one eye, and then the fog around it quickly condensed and entered it. This action was exactly what the turbid beast wanted to test, whether the wormhole was really the other world. After a burst of fog poured into it, the turbid beast's one eye suddenly widened a little. It didn't say it, but secretly exclaimed, "It's really a different world." The excited and surprised expression has completely interpreted the words in its mind. There is no hesitation at the moment, and the entire dark cloud directly enters the wormhole. As the dark cloud enters, the fog around it is like its tail, rushing in crazily. The wormhole summoned by Li Ming is 100 meters long and wide, but it is still too small to face the huge base of fog. At this moment, the wormhole is like a drain, and the fog is like a river, rushing in crazily. The fog condensed very quickly. Even from the perspective of space, one could see that the gray area on Bergson was disappearing quickly, and the areas originally covered by fog gradually became clear. These places that had been sealed by fog for thousands of years had never seen the sun, and no other creatures had ever set foot here. At this time, they suddenly became clear, which surprised the people who saw them. This scene was naturally played out in Bridges' eyes, but Bridges was already a little uneasy at this moment, and his eyes kept blinking slightly. After a while, the black wormhole gradually weakened, and the originally dense electric light became sparse. There was still a lot of fog pouring into it, but the wormhole was unstable at this time. This situation occurred because the dark energy in Li Ming's body had been exhausted, but a large part of the fog remnant still existed. Li Ming's eyes looked in the direction of his palm. The wormhole in the sky eventually dissipated slowly, and the black dark energy turned into dots of starlight and slowly disappeared in the air. Even the remaining dark energy on Li Ming's right hand turned into a filament-like arc, which was no longer moving after a few jumps. The wormhole has closed and disappeared. The remaining fog here still covers the area of tens of kilometers, but compared to before, this is insignificant. These fogs will not dissipate, but they may be eliminated. If an advanced civilization like Li Ming wants to destroy it, it is not difficult, but if it is left, this group of fog will inevitably become the clone of the turbid beast, and it may revive and form an independent consciousness. Li Ming is not interested in this at the moment. He turned around and returned to the cave. With the strength of a first-level civilization, those star books that have been cultivated will naturally be further refined. At this time, Li Ming is no longer worried about leaving the Croft Galaxy, nor is he afraid that anyone can threaten him, so he can return to the cave so calmly. After finding a new place in the cave, Li Ming slowly sat down and prepared to cultivate the star book. Li Ming's cultivation of star books is different from that of ordinary aliens, because Li Ming has the 6-domain star book. With this star book, Li Ming can quickly master other star books in a short time. Therefore, after sitting down, Li Ming took out the 6-domain star book first. The 6-domain star book was obtained by Li Ming from Mars. The unique feature of this star book is that it requires the ability of wisdom eyes to read it, and the appearance of this star book is the same as that of ordinary books, not a meteorite like that of alien civilizations. After entering the first level civilization, many of the star books that Li Ming had learned before can be greatly improved, among which the most important are the 6-domain star book, the 6-domain star eyes star book, the alchemy star book at the end of the beast atlas, and the advanced alchemy synthesis star book. In addition to these, Li Ming has many things that need to be developed after the first level civilization, but at this time Li Ming is just practicing the star book first, and as for other things, he will make plans. After leaving the Croft Galaxy, Li Ming started practicing the star book, and Bridges, who had been watching, was a little eager to move. After all, Bridges is a first level civilization, and he can get away even when facing the turbid beast body, so after the vision, Bridges has some interest in the remaining fog group. Staring with his eyes, his figure has begun to float slowly over there. The place that was previously covered by the fog has now seen the light of day again, but the soil and color are completely different from the soil outside, and the color difference is also very huge. The soil outside is loose, like sand, and light yellow. The soil that has been covered by the fog is relatively hard, even a little sticky, and dark brown. Flying over this land, Bridges also showed a look of astonishment. His eyes kept looking at the area within his sight, and he couldn't help whispering, "The fog that has existed for thousands of years has disappeared." As he said this, his eyes slowly moved to the fog in the distance, and whispered, "What happened to this turbid beast?" The confusion in his eyes, the unknown in his mind, and the previous strange astronomical phenomena, these mysteries attracted Bridges to get closer little by little. In the huge range, Bridges flew slowly for a long time, and was cautious throughout the whole process. Although the fog has shrunk, he still has to be extremely careful. After all, Bergson Star has been dealing with this fog for many years. The shrinking of the fog could also be due to the turbid beast recovering its true form, which was fully reflected in the repeated attacks of the turbid beast's clones on the material warehouse. Therefore, Bridges was also very careful. After flying for half a day, Bridges' figure had already reached the edge of the fog, and this position was probably where the celestial phenomenon had just appeared. His figure was still in the air, and Bridges had no intention of entering the fog, but was just observing from the edge. At this moment, a figure slowly walked out of the fog below. This sudden appearance of the figure immediately attracted Bridges' attention, and he looked over with a pair of eyes. At this time, the person who was walking below suddenly stopped in place, as if he noticed Bridges, who was looking at him from high in the sky, and raised his head slightly, and looked up at the sky. The two looked at each other directly. "Is it him?" Bridges was shocked, and the muscles under his eyes twitched slightly. Li Ming, on the other hand, looked calm and indifferent. After looking at Bridges back and forth, He smiled. Along with that smile, Li Ming's figure slowly flew into the air and stopped only when he was at the same height as Bridges. Bridges' eyebrows tightened and his eyes were full of anger. With a trembling mouth, he said word by word, "First level civilization." Li Ming snorted and said, "Yeah, you can't imagine it. I'm also quite surprised." Chapter 312 Reappearance. No more nonsense. Hand over the star map key, and I'll leave you with an intact body, Li Ming said casually, with a relaxed and natural expression, not revealing any murderous intent. But Bridges gritted his teeth, snorted disdainfully, and said, "Even if you have reached the first level civilization, you have only just entered the first level civilization. With your combat cognition, how can you compare with me?" Li Ming smiled lightly, raised his right hand slightly, and a golden arc jumped in his palm. The arc was long and stood upright on the palm, more than 1 meter high. "Your cognition is my cognition," Li Ming said lightly, and his eyes turned to look at the arc in his hand. In that way, he didn't take the other party seriously at all. "You guy." Bridges squeezed out these words from his teeth fiercely, and at the same time, he moved and rushed straight towards Li Ming. Bridges' speed changed slightly, but in front of Li Ming, who was already a first level civilization, this speed was no longer so fast that he couldn't dodge, but rather very ordinary. Looking at the oncoming Bridges, Li Ming waved his hand and the arc flew out. As soon as the golden arc left his hand, there was a loud crack, and a white light spread out, as if a bolt of lightning had struck in an instant. "Ah!" A painful cry was heard, and Bridges' figure fell straight down from the air, but the right arm used for attacking had disappeared. Before his body landed on the ground, Bridges struggled to stabilize his body again, holding the missing right arm with his left hand, with a painful look on his face, looking up at Li Ming with his eyes, his lips raised, all his teeth exposed, and blood between his teeth. This attack, unexpectedly. Bridges looked at Li Ming, and couldn't say a word. Li Ming's figure slowly fell down, looking at Bridges with contempt, and said, "I'll give you another chance. Hand over the star map key voluntarily, and I'll leave you a whole body." Hearing this again, Bridges' expression became even more angry. He looked at Li Ming fiercely and said, "You're going to die anyway, why do you want a whole body?" Li Ming sighed slightly, shook his head, and aimed his right hand at Bridges, and grabbed the air. Bridges felt his body tighten, as if his body was firmly locked by something. His two separated legs suddenly closed together, as if they were suddenly tightened by a rope, and his upper body was also tight and unable to move. It looked like he was tied up by something. Bridges was shocked and wanted to struggle hard, but his body couldn't move, no matter how hard he tried. At this moment, golden smoke began to appear on Bridges' body, legs, and neck. From a distance, it seemed as if Bridges was bound by the golden smoke, but the next moment, the situation changed drastically. The golden smoke slowly condensed and gathered, and finally formed a golden chain. The chain was formed in the form of a phantom, but it played a physical role and firmly fixed Bridges. The golden chain was the transformation of the magic shield. The magic shield has reached its peak under Li Ming's practice. Because of his powerful spiritual civilization ability, all kinds of abilities have been qualitatively changed and improved in Li Ming. The magic shield itself uses energy to create barrier particles to block various forms of attacks, but in Li Ming's case, those barrier particles have been changed and used by Li Ming at will, and these characteristics are the advantages of multiple civilizations in one. Looking at Bridges who couldn't move, Li Ming's face was expressionless, and his figure slowly floated down from high to in front of Bridges. At this time, Bridges looked at Li Ming again, and he was already full of fear, and his trembling lips couldn't say a word. Li Ming narrowed his eyes, looked at it again, and said, "The corpse is the only proof that you have been in this world." As he spoke, Li Ming's right hand slowly stretched out, and the action was like preparing to take something. At the same time as his hand stretched out, a green light phantom swam out along Li Ming's arm. When the shadowy hand first appeared, it was almost the same size as Li Ming's palm, but as it approached Bridges, it grew larger and larger, until it wrapped around him. It was like a big hand grasping Bridges, and at the moment of grasping, Bridges' head buzzed lightly, as if his head was stabbed by a sharp weapon, and it was extremely painful. In Bridges' brain, there are many cognitions about the Chinese system, and some of them are protected by memory barriers. Li Ming is now forcibly exploring all the information. What Bridges knows enters Li Ming's brain little by little through the green light shadow. The amount of information in it is huge. The shadowy arm has become a transmission belt at this moment, and the memory enters Li Ming's brain along the green light like a film. The intake of more information makes Li Ming's expression change slightly, because this information gives Li Ming a general understanding of the Chinese system. After getting the information, Li Ming pulled back his right hand, and the shadowy hand slowly retracted. At the same time, 2 star bags were wrapped in the shadowy hand. Bridges could only watch all this. The star bags fell into Li Ming's palm, and then he clenched his palm, and the 2 star bags disappeared. At this moment, Bridges' eyes were wide open, his eyeballs were trembling slightly in his eye sockets, his whole face was extremely pale, and his upper and lower teeth were colliding with each other in his trembling mouth. The fear was unprecedented, even in the 1.1 level civilization, or even the 1.2 level civilization, there was no such existence. After getting what he wanted, Li Ming glanced at the other party again and said, "Friend, you can go and get your lunch." As soon as the voice fell, his right hand suddenly slapped out at an incredibly fast speed. There was a flash of golden light, bang, the burst of white light passed by, and Bridges in front of him had completely disappeared. After doing this, Li Ming flew towards the building. At this moment, in front of the giant building, 2 9th level civilizations were discussing something. Among them, Bone looked at the low-rise buildings in front of him and said, "Lord Bridges went to the fog alone. It must be because of the celestial phenomenon just now and that kid. With our strength, we naturally can't help, but we can let destruction number 1 go to help." Angelina was surprised and happy to hear this, and gritted her teeth and said, "With Lord Bridges doing it himself, that kid is definitely dead." Angelina's words and actions were even a little excited, as if Li Ming's death was very important to her. Bona nodded slightly and smiled. "Of course, this is certain, but that place is the territory of the turbid beast after all, and sending destruction number 1 is also to prevent any eventuality." As the two said this, their eyes were all cast in the direction of the giant building. Right behind the giant building, that is, in the direction of the fog, a lot of 7th level soldiers appeared nearby, each holding a lightsaber, ready to fight. Li Ming flew from the direction of the mist in the distance, glanced down, and didn't care about these soldiers. With Li Ming's current level of civilization, those low-level civilizations are like ants, and will not be taken seriously at all. Just a glance, Li Ming ran to his triangular spaceship. Passing by the giant building, he came to the front door of the building, because this is where his spaceship is parked. Just as Li Ming was about to approach his triangular spaceship, the giant building below suddenly made a loud creaking sound, and 2 low-rise buildings slowly moved away like a door. Li Ming's eyes swept lightly, and found 2 familiar figures, one was Bonner and the other was Angelina. As for the place where the building moved, Li Ming recognized it at once with the knowledge he had gained. Destruction number 1. Speaking to himself, Li Ming smiled slightly, moved his body, and flew to the ground. Destruction number 1 is a product of scientific and technological civilization, with extremely strong combat power. Even if it cannot defeat the enemy, it can also perish with the enemy by self-detonation. A light buzzing sound was heard. This sound came from the brain, and also from Li Ming's arrival. Now Li Ming can directly influence low-level creatures through his mental power. His strength is far beyond what it used to be. Bona and Angelina quickly hugged their heads. After a few seconds, the pain in their heads was relieved a little bit. They loosened their hands and looked around. They saw Li Ming floating in the sky behind them, motionless. Li Ming ignored the two and just looked in the direction of destruction number 1. Chapter 313. Entering the central system. Li Ming's sudden appearance shocked and angered the two. They were about to say something, but the next second, their expressions were dull, and they couldn't say a word. Their stiff heads turned slightly, as if they had gears on their necks. Very slowly, they looked at each other, and beads of sweat the size of beans flowed down their foreheads, and their open mouths could not close for a long time. Lord Bridges. Isn't he? Isn't he gone? How could this person appear here? And he is already a first level civilization. Boner's mind secretly said this sentence, and his whole body was stiff and unable to move, just because he was shocked by Li Ming's breath. At this time, a metal door appeared at the bottom of the building that was moved away in the distance. The door flashed red and opened to both sides. Then a huge figure slowly emerged from the bottom. It was a robot. The robot was black in color and looked almost the same as the aliens here, but its body was made entirely of steel and metal. The whole body was flashing with a faint light, and it was mysterious and unusual. This was extremely rare in low-level technological civilizations. The size of the robot was comparable to the surrounding high-rise buildings, and it was 100 meters high. After a beep, a red light flashed from the top of the robot's head. The red light was in the shape of a across the robot's forehead. It was the robot's eye. Destruction number 1 started successfully. A mechanical and stiff voice came from the robot. Then 3 tiny red rays suddenly shot out from the red eyes. The rays were as thin as gossamer and shone on Angelina, Bonan and Li Ming respectively. A second later, the rays shining on Angelina and Bonan suddenly turned and came to Li Ming. Unverified creatures found, locked as the main target of attack. Upon hearing this, the nervous Bonan suddenly smiled and looked at Li Ming again. Although he was still afraid of Li Ming in his heart, he was much bolder at this time with the help of destruction number 1. Li Ming looked calm. He waved his right hand lightly, and a green light shot out from his arm. The green light flashed and entered the robot's body and disappeared. As soon as they saw Li Ming's behavior, Bonner and Angelina were shocked, thinking that Li Ming was going to use some powerful means. But when they turned their eyes to the robot, they found that the robot was normal, and they were confused. A few seconds later, the robot destruction number 1 made a sound again. Sorry, the order has been changed. Destruction number 1 has entered the countdown for self-destruction. 19, 18, 17. Upon hearing this, Bonner exclaimed ah, and even Angelina beside him was at a loss for a moment. But now looking at Li Ming again, he has already flown away and entered the triangular spaceship. 10, 9, 8. Time is counting down, like the bell of death. Bonner is very clear about the power of the self-destruction of destruction number 1. Hearing the number, he turned around and flew away, escaping to the distance. Li Ming's triangular spaceship disappeared in the air after a flash. When the ripples reappeared, Li Ming was already in space, sitting high in the main cabin, looking at the floating operating mirror in front of him. He turned his right hand and a black stone appeared in his hand. This stone was not big, and its appearance was like a pebble. There were golden symbols flashing on it. It was the star map key. After looking at the star map key in his hand and the operating mirror in front of him, Li Ming smiled slightly and said, "The central system of the Milky Way. LZ is here." With the star map key in his hand, Li Ming drove the triangular spacecraft to break through the critical point and head straight for the central system. At this moment, at the critical point of the Bidet galaxy, a space station spacecraft was welcoming new guests. 3 aliens walked quickly in the corridor of the spacecraft, and the heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. The leader was Adrewini, and behind him were Millicent and Winslow from the Canis Major Dwarf Galaxy. At the end of the corridor was a portal. The 3 of them came close and flashed in. After passing through the portal, the 3 of them came to a spacious cabin. There are 3 metal walls in this cabin, and one is a transparent wall, like a huge floor-to-ceiling glass window. From this position, you can clearly see the dazzling starry sky outside, which is wonderful. McCree sat quietly in front of a meteorite table. When he saw the 3 people, he stood up with a smile. Adrewini hurriedly stepped forward and introduced, "This is our station master, McCree." When Millicent saw McCree, her originally arrogant attitude suddenly weakened a little, and her eyes showed a trace of respect. She smiled lightly and said nothing more. Then the 4 of them slowly sat down around the meteorite table, and McCree spoke first. "You 2 are distinguished guests from the Canis Major Galaxy. You should have been invited directly to our Hawaii Alliance headquarters for proper arrangements, but some accidents have happened in the Alliance recently, so I brought you 2 here temporarily, to get a preliminary understanding of our Hawaii Alliance." Millicent winked and smiled, joining the Milky Way, and becoming a member of the Hawaii Alliance. "This, Adrewini has already told me, and I agree." McCree nodded with satisfaction and said, "In that case, it couldn't be better." The Hua Alliance is the largest alliance among the Chinese civilizations. Each member will have a fixed energy area allocated to it to ensure energy needs. But once you join this alliance, you will get a corresponding position, and everything will be based on this position. In other words, only by completing your job and being loyal to the alliance can you obtain more resources and energy. McCree continued. Millicent was a little surprised at first, but soon smiled and said, "That is of course no problem." At this, Millicent's eyes suddenly changed, and she said again, "But before I really join your alliance, there is one thing I have to deal with personally." McCree paused and looked a little puzzled. At this time, Adrewini immediately said, "Are you talking about that 9th level kid?" Millicent was furious when she thought of Li Ming's face, as if an adult was teased by a child, but she only hated that she was too far away to do anything to him, but she was still worried in her heart, as if she was always saying, "Boy, don't let me touch you." When McCree heard this, he immediately remembered and said, "So, I remember that Bridges has already taken action, and Adriana is also waiting. I believe there will be a result soon. In my opinion, you don't have to worry about this matter. After staying with me for a few days, you should go to the Alliance headquarters first." Adrewini also said, "When you arrive at the Alliance headquarters and complete your duties, your tribe will be able to settle down in the Milky Way. As for the little 9th level, Adriana will definitely bring it back to you." The two persuaded Millicent like this. Although she couldn't calm down her anger, she still nodded reluctantly and said, "Okay then." At this moment, Li Ming's triangular spaceship flashed out in an airspace. In the dark space, there was no end in sight. Li Ming sat high in the main cabin, smiled slightly, and looked at the operating mirror in front of him. He said to himself, "Finally arrived in the central system." As he said this, Li Ming's eyes were fixed on the operating mirror in front of him. After hesitating for a while, he raised his hand and pointed at the operating mirror and tapped it lightly. The mirror ripples flickered, countless stars quickly passed through the mirror, and then a galaxy appeared in front of Li Ming. Yuho star system. This star system is the closest star system to the planetary belt. The central system is different from the outer system. There are relatively few star systems, civilizations are more widely distributed, and resources and energy have been discovered and occupied. This galaxy in front of Li Ming is what he got from Bridges' cognition. In addition, there are also items related to the central system in Bridges' 2-star bags, such as the central system space map. Because the central system is already close to the center of the Milky Way, there are nebulae everywhere, complex and changeable, and there are even many places that are restricted areas. It is absolutely impossible without a space map. A lot of information about the Yuho star system has emerged in Li Ming's mind. Chapter 314. Fish Fire Star System. The Yuho star system belongs to the control area of the Hua Alliance. No civilization was born in this galaxy, but it was discovered by civilizations from other galaxies, so they moved here and occupied it. There are 5 larger planets in this galaxy, and the other planets are smaller. The one that meets the living conditions is the Big Fish Planet 3rd, and the people who moved here are the Tillmans. Li Ming is quite interested in the Hua Alliance. According to Bridges' knowledge, the Hua Alliance is the largest alliance in the Milky Way, and it exists as an alliance among the advanced civilizations in the Milky Way. Alliances are generally divided into large alliances and small alliances. Large alliances are formed by 5 galaxy civilizations, or more than 5 galaxy civilizations, and small alliances will not exceed 5 galaxy civilizations. The role of the alliance is mainly to control and distribute the energy resources of a fixed star field. Once a galaxy in the alliance is threatened, other galaxies in the alliance will help. Therefore, joining the alliance is a security guarantee for a galaxy civilization. At the same time, its own resources and energy will not be plundered. In addition to the energy and resources controlled by the galaxy itself, there are also some shared resources in the alliance, but these resources are from planets outside the galaxy, and it is extremely difficult to obtain and mine them. Moreover, the status of a galaxy civilization in the alliance also determines its chances of obtaining some shared resources, so it is even more important to improve its status in the alliance. Although the Tillmans of the Yuhuo star system belong to the Huai Alliance, their status in the alliance is very low, and even Bridges looks down on this galaxy. The high position is determined by the comprehensive strength of the galaxy itself. The Tillmans are not strong enough, so they will naturally be excluded by other galaxy civilizations in the alliance. In fact, this is also normal. Once a civilized galaxy cannot make contributions to the alliance, it is very likely to be kicked out of the alliance and go to decline and extinction. Li Ming looked at the operating mirror in front of him with hesitation and whispered, "The Tillmans of the Yuhuo star system are the weakest. It should be safer to go there." Muttering to himself, Li Ming moved his hand on the operating mirror to determine his own transmission position. The spacecraft began to transmit itself. Li Ming closed his eyes slightly and began to recall the important cognition in Bridges' mind. After breaking through the first level civilization, it is equivalent to entering the advanced civilization sequence from the low level, but for the civilization itself, this is far from the end. It has just stepped into the starting point of the advanced civilization. It will be more difficult for the first level civilization to continue to advance. From the first level civilization to the 1.1 level civilization, 2 materials are needed. One is the power of flowing clouds, and the other is red ren. 2 pieces of the power of flowing clouds are needed, and 1 piece of red ren. The power of flowing clouds needs BGUI to synthesize, but that is in the outer system. After reaching the middle system, although it can still be synthesized, more civilizations will adopt the method of direct acquisition, because this thing can be formed naturally on some special planets. As for red ren, it can be directly obtained like Huayu. Huayu has lost its effectiveness for advanced civilizations. Although this thing is originally very scarce, it has no use for the first level civilization. Advancement is the most important thing for civilized creatures at any time, and it is naturally more important to be the first to understand the information about this aspect. In addition to advancement, other cognitions are insignificant to Li Ming at the moment, so naturally there is no need to take it to heart. As he was thinking about this, the operating mirror in front of him suddenly made a beeping sound. Li Ming opened his eyes slightly and looked at the operating mirror in front of him. He saw a connection request on the mirror, and the signal came from the Fishfire star system. Li Ming hesitated for a moment, but soon accepted the other party's request. With a finger, a picture immediately appeared on the calm operating mirror. The picture showed an alien with light green skin, a head like a mantis, 2 eyes that were particularly prominent and huge, and each eye had an eyebrow, which was thin and long. Very strange. Who are you? This is the Fishfire star system of the Tillmans of the Huai Alliance, the alien said viciously, as soon as he opened his mouth, with a fierce look and extremely displeased. Li Ming seemed more respectful and said gently, "I'm not from the Chinese system, but from a newly advanced first level civilization in the foreign system. If there is any offense, I can evacuate immediately." Newly advanced first level civilization? The other party immediately showed a puzzled look and kept looking at Li Ming with his eyes. After a moment, he said, "Do you mean that you are the only one in your spaceship?" This question made Li Ming startled. He didn't know why the other party asked this question, but after a moment of hesitation, he nodded slightly. The alien with the mantis head turned his eyes slightly, hesitated for a while, and said, "If you want to enter the Fishfire galaxy, you must accept our remote control connection. We will control your spaceship to enter the galaxy, otherwise, you can't come in." The other party was so cautious that Li Ming really didn't understand. After a little hesitation, Li Ming nodded again and replied, "Okay." Hearing Li Ming agree, the alien was satisfied. Then, the operating mirror sent another connection request, which was a request for remote control of Li Ming's spaceship. Li Ming hesitated for a while, but still nodded to accept. This remote control is equivalent to handing over all the control rights of the spacecraft to the other party. In other words, the other party can not only control the flight trajectory of the spacecraft, but also master all the data information in the spacecraft. Li Ming didn't care too much. This spacecraft was not originally Li Ming's, and the data information on it had nothing to do with Li Ming. The only thing that was related was Li Ming's name and flight trajectory. Moreover, Li Ming just wanted to find a place to stay temporarily and then reconsolidate his newly advanced first level civilization. After all, after the first level civilization, Li Ming still had to understand many of the items on his body for future use, because Li Ming had obtained many items from advanced civilizations in the outer system, but at that time he could not understand and use them, because of the low level of civilization. Now that Li Ming has entered the first level civilization, he naturally still has to understand them. In this way, finding a place to stay is particularly important. At first, Li Ming also wanted to go to some remote star systems, or wandering planets and other places, but according to Li Ming's previous experience and Li Ming's understanding of the central system, that would be even more unsafe. Wandering planets generally have harsh environments, and some are even more dangerous. Those remote galaxies are actually not remote at all for the Chinese civilization. After all, in advanced civilizations, interstellar travel is very common, so there is no such thing as remoteness. After many considerations, Li Ming might as well find a civilized galaxy first, even if it is of a lower status, but as long as he can accomplish what he wants, it is enough. After all, Li Ming still has the confidence to leave at any time. The spacecraft was controlled by the civilization of the Yuhuo galaxy, and began to enter the depths of the Yuhuo galaxy. Li Ming sat quietly on the spacecraft with his eyes closed, looking like he was recuperating. While Li Ming was so excited, in a certain airspace outside the planetary belt, a round spacecraft was parked in the empty universe without moving. But Adriana, the owner of the main cabin of the spacecraft, frowned, because on the operating console of the spacecraft, a red dot was flashing rapidly, but this red dot was very weak, like a blurred shadow. Looking at the flashing red dot, Adriana frowned and whispered, "Why did Netting's signal appear in the middle system? And the signal is getting worse and worse? Could it be that Netting was captured by the advanced civilization?" Adriana muttered to herself, her face full of doubts, but when she saw the signal on the console, she couldn't help shaking her head slightly. It shouldn't be. Netting is on that boy. Even if Netting appears, he should be in Bridge's hands. Why did he appear in the middle system? Adriana muttered to herself while thinking, but she couldn't figure it out for a while. Heoyu artifact and Hansao magic artifact both have their own unique characteristics and signal sources, but they are all built when the weapon has no owner. Once the artifact has a comprehensive owner's consciousness, its signal will disappear. Moreover, with the continuous injection of the owner's consciousness, the artifact's signal will become weaker and weaker, which is why the red dot on Adriana's console is weak. Chapter 315, The Tillmans. No one would spend resources and energy to deliberately explore the signals of artifacts or magic weapons. Among many weapons, the information of the artifacts to be explored needs to be entered into the system before exploration can be carried out. In other words, when there is reliable news that a certain artifact does not have an owner, then a large number of people will explore it. The reason why Adriana has been following Li Ming is that she witnessed Li Ming using Neteng with her own eyes, so she entered Neteng's information into the spacecraft and monitored it at any time. At this time, Adriana looked at the weak Neteng signal entering the Fishfire galaxy little by little, and her eyes narrowed slightly. No matter who got Neteng, we must go and see the situation. We have been tracking for so long. We must not let others take Neteng away easily. As she said this, Adriana stretched out her right hand, lightly tapped on the operating table, and began to enter the Fishfire galaxy. At this time, Li Ming, after a period of transmission, the spacecraft had arrived in the outer space of the Big Fish 3 planets. With his eyes slightly opened, looking at the operating mirror in front of him, the entire Big Fish 3 planets had already appeared in front of him. This is a pale yellow planet, with patches of black occasionally visible. The black area accounts for a very low proportion of the planet, less than 1/10 of the planet's area. From the perspective of space, such a planet can only be inhabited by aliens. There is no green or blue. From Li Ming's understanding, this planet is probably mostly desert rocks, basically the same as most other planets. The outer space of the Big Fish 3 planet has its own space station. The appearance of the space station is like a giant gyroscope, flying slowly in a predetermined orbit. There are 2 such space stations in the space of the planet, both of which are within the exploration range of Li Ming's operating mirror. The line presented on the operating mirror is not to transmit the triangular spacecraft directly to the Big Fish 3 planet, but to connect to the space station. Li Ming stood still and waited for the other party's operation, expressionless and calm. The triangular spacecraft that entered the Big Fish 3 space also entered the predetermined orbit and then flew slowly around the orbit. At the same time, a space station was also on the same orbit as the triangular spacecraft. Although Li Ming's triangular spacecraft is not small in size, compared with the space station, it is like a leaf and a big tree. There are many straight metal arms extending from the huge space station, just like the surface of an apple with toothpicks stuck in it. The top of these metal arms is the parking place for the spacecraft, which is somewhat like a spherical cruise bay, but the technical level is obviously not as good as that of the spherical cruise bay. When the space station gets closer to the triangular spacecraft, one of the metal arms will quickly extend out, just like a human arm. The top of the metal arm uses some kind of powerful suction device. Once the triangular spacecraft approaches, it will grab it steadily and then slowly drag it back to the vicinity of the space station. The whole action is completed, which means that the triangular spacecraft is successfully connected to the space station. Li Ming stood up from the main cabin, and the operating mirror was moved away from him. At this time, a beam of light shone through the spacecraft into the main cabin. The beam was in a virtual state, which was the transmission channel. Li Ming glanced at it and walked over quickly. As soon as his body touched the virtual shadow suddenly brightened, like a door was opened. The whole body was instantly wrapped in the light and then flashed and disappeared. When Li Ming came out again, he was already in a cabin. The cabin was empty, except for a portal on the side. Li Ming turned his eyes and walked towards the portal. After passing through the portal, Li Ming appeared in a cabin again, but this cabin was different from the previous one. This cabin was relatively small, like the cabin of a small spaceship. Li Ming turned his body around to look around, and soon noticed the control console. He walked over quickly, narrowed his eyes, and glanced at it, and frowned slightly. Is this an independent spaceship? As he was whispering, the spaceship under him suddenly changed slightly, and the light on the control console flickered. The spaceship had already started. Li Ming stretched out his right hand, and a green light shot out from his fingertips and hit the control console. Bang! A muffled sound was heard, and the green light dissipated on the surface of the control console. Li Ming was startled when he saw this, but after a careful look, his expression eased again. He smiled slightly and nodded. Originally, this spaceship was controlled by the ground of Big Fish Planet 3rd. After understanding the reason, Li Ming stopped trying to operate the console and let the spaceship start by itself. After a tremor, the small spaceship shot out from the space station and headed straight for Big Fish Planet 3rd. This small spaceship was completely controlled by the ground, and even Li Ming could do nothing about it. But Li Ming didn't need to worry, because the small spaceship was just a transfer tool. Li Ming also saw the process of entering Big Fish Planet 3rd, which was to hand over his spaceship to the space station first, and then arrange for the spaceship from the space station to send the personnel back to the ground. The whole process was controlled by the aliens on Big Fish Planet 3rd, and Li Ming didn't need to do anything. The small spaceship first entered the atmosphere, and then began to fly at high altitude according to the predetermined trajectory on the ground, and then gradually lowered its altitude and approached the ground. Li Ming saw all this throughout the process, but after approaching the ground, the true appearance of this planet had emerged, and it also had great attraction to Li Ming. The yellow areas of Big Fish 3 are all mountain rocks, and lakes appear occasionally, but the color of the water in those lakes is gray, as if they have been seriously polluted. But if you look closely, these lakes don't look like water, but more like some other liquids. In addition, there are patches of black areas on the planet. Li Ming had already noticed this in space, but he could only see it clearly after getting closer. These black areas are actually some plants, like some big trees. Some grass, all in patches, like a forest. Li Ming could only see roughly from the sky, and didn't pay much attention. After flying for a while, the small spacecraft came to the sky above a construction area, and began to prepare for landing. This construction area is very vast and boundless, all made of pale yellow rocks, which makes these buildings exactly the same color as the surface of the planet, even in space. Even Li Ming could only see it clearly after he took a small spacecraft to a low altitude. Civilized creatures usually deliberately hide themselves from being discovered by other civilizations. This is a very normal phenomenon, but the Big Fish 3 planet does a very good job in this regard. The buildings in front of him were irregular and disorderly, as if they were piles of rocks, some hundreds of meters high, some only tens of meters, and some even shorter. The small spaceship that Li Ming was riding on came directly to a large rock, which was only tens of meters high, but huge, hundreds of meters long and wide. As soon as the spaceship landed, the hatch opened automatically, and Li Ming walked out of the spaceship. There was sand under his feet, and occasionally the wind blew up layers of sand and dust. He raised his eyes slightly, and under the scorching sun, he looked at the bottom of the boulder not far away, and a black hole was clearly visible. Li Ming did not hesitate, and walked directly over. As Li Ming left, the hatch of the small spaceship just now closed automatically, and then started to fly back into the sky. Li Ming just looked back, not paying too much attention, and continued to walk towards the black hole. In a moment, Li Ming had come to the edge of a cave entrance. The dark cave entrance was now bright. The cave entrance was more than 10 meters long and wide, which was very huge. As soon as he entered, he felt a cool breeze, which was much better than the hot sand outside under the sun. At this time, more than a dozen aliens had appeared in the cave. They all had mantis heads, exactly the same as what Li Ming had seen on the operating mirror before. The two leading people were 2 meters tall, and were both first-level civilizations. Just a glance at Li Ming, the two aliens also showed some surprise. After looking at each other, they continued to look at Li Ming, because in their previous prediction, Li Ming might just be a 9th-level civilization who had sneaked in from the outside system. Although Li Ming once claimed to be a first-level civilization, based on the experience of living in the Chinese system for a long time, this probability was not high. It was just that they didn't expect that the other party was indeed a first-level civilization. So it was inevitable to be a little surprised. One of the aliens spoke first. According to the information on your spacecraft, your name is Li Ming. You are from the Chaos Galaxy in the outer system. Li Ming did enter this information into his system when he was using the triangular spacecraft. It was natural for the other party to say so now. Li Ming just smiled and nodded without saying much. The alien's tone was also gentle. He continued to look at Li Ming, and even smiled a little, and said, "My name is Robertson, and the one next to him is Delks. The two of us are the supreme commanders of the Tillman civilization. Let's go inside and talk first." The person who spoke was Robertson. At the end of his words, he even made a gesture of invitation, as if he was extremely respectful to Li Ming. Li Ming smiled slightly and walked over. Deep in the cave was a spacious open area, and the ground was also smooth and flat stone slabs, emitting a faint light, making the entire area like a square. Chapter 316 Joining. At the end of the cave, which was several dozen meters long and wide, were 3 portals. Under the guidance of Robertson, Li Ming entered the portal in the middle. After entering through this portal, he came to an independent house the next moment. The walls of the house were all black, which was completely different from the pale yellow outside. It was obvious that when the rock was transformed into a residential area, the interior had undergone special transformation. In the middle of the house was a conference table that was 5 or 6 meters long and wide. It was made of some special meteorite, and was always emitting energy. The rest of the house was filled with other decorations, which were nothing special. Robertson and Elks invited Li Ming to sit down at the conference table together, and smiled slightly. The two people were very gentle in their attitude towards Li Ming, but there was also a little abnormality. However, Li Ming only used his wisdom eyes to see their intentions. Robertson's eyes kept looking at Li Ming. After hesitating for a while, he said, "You said you were from the outside department. Is this your first time in the Chinese department?" Li Ming nodded gently, still without saying a word. Robertson then turned his gaze to Delks, and the two smiled knowingly, as if confirming some information. Robson then continued, "Since this is the first time to arrive in the central system, there are some things I still need to explain to you clearly. The central system civilization is not like those low-level civilizations in the outer systems. If you want to survive in the central system civilization, you must join the alliance. In this way, you can guarantee your status and safety in the central system. Otherwise, you will be regarded as an invader, which will be very troublesome. Robson continued. Li Ming also smiled lightly and said, although this is the first time to come to the central system, I know about the system of the Alliance. Robson was stunned when he heard this and couldn't help but look at Delks again. The two of them showed hesitation. Li Ming, with his eyes slightly narrowed, had already seen through the two people's thoughts. The Tillmans belong to an intelligent civilization, one of the member civilizations of the Hua Alliance. One of the reasons why they are so friendly to Li Ming at this moment is related to the status of their civilization in the Alliance. As the largest alliance in the central system, the Hua Alliance has gathered civilizations from 11 star systems. It is a large alliance among large alliances. By joining this alliance, there is basically no need to worry about your own safety and the inherent resources in the star system. However, the expansion of the alliance also brings many problems, that is, the distribution of common resources outside the alliance. These resources are often extremely important resources, and the amount of resources is also very limited. Therefore, the distribution should be based on the greatest contribution among the alliance members. The size of the contribution directly depends on the strength of the civilization. According to the knowledge obtained by Li Ming's eyes, the Tillman people have a total of 2 first-level civilizations, and their strength is already the lowest in the alliance. In this way, if you want to increase your strength, you must increase the number of first-level civilizations in the civilization, and Li Ming, who has just entered the first-level civilization, naturally becomes their target for expanding their strength. However, after hearing that Li Ming has some understanding of the alliance system, the two are still a little worried. Since they understand the alliance system, it is possible to join other civilizations. In other words, no matter which first level civilization, the ultimate goal is to rush to the highest civilization. Joining a more powerful civilization, the chance of obtaining resources is naturally greater, so the two want to keep Li Ming. Li Ming saw the thoughts of the two with his eyes, but Li Ming just wanted to find a secluded place to meditate for some time. As for joining a more powerful civilization galaxy, it is not yet in Li Ming's consideration. Robertson showed a hesitant expression, and his eyes were rolling, as if he was thinking about something, but Delks on the side said directly, since you understand the alliance system, then, have you decided which galaxy civilization to join? Li Ming smiled faintly, shook his head, and said, because I just arrived in the central system, I don't know much about these. Robertson seemed to see an opportunity when he heard this, and laughed a few times, saying, in this case, I can recommend two to you. The two largest alliances closest to here are the Hua Alliance and the Huff Alliance. Although they are both large alliances, the Hua Alliance has 11 member galaxies, while the Huff Alliance has only 5. Robertson continued. Li Ming's eyes lit up when he heard this, and after a chuckle, he said, of course, it would be best to join a larger alliance. Li Ming knew very well that Robertson had said so much to Li Ming. Wasn't he waiting for Li Ming to say this? After hearing Li Ming's choice, Robertson immediately continued, we, the Tillmans, are one of the member star systems of the Hua Alliance, so, if you join us, you will join the largest alliance. Li Ming pretended to be excited after hearing this, and his expression was slightly surprised, but everything returned to normal 2 seconds later, and he didn't say anything more. There was no direct reply, nor was there an obvious refusal, as if he was in hesitation, and seeing Li Ming's hesitation was the most worrying, because Robertson knew very well that Li Ming could completely join other star systems in the Hua Alliance. After all, in the Hua Alliance, the Tillmans were already the weakest. Seeing Li Ming's hesitation, Robertson couldn't help but feel a little worried. He glanced at Delks beside him, and then looked at Li Ming, his eyes rolling, as if he was thinking about something. After a few seconds, Robson spoke again. As a first-level civilization, once you join our Tillman people, your status will be the same as the two of us, belonging to the level of Grand Mage, the highest existence of the entire civilization, and you will also enjoy many resources in our civilization. Resources? Li Ming immediately understood the meaning of resources when he heard about them, and followed up. Robson nodded gently and continued, of course. For example, our spaceships, our star nationality, our energy, and our materials are all given priority to Grand Mage. Hearing this, Li Ming smiled with satisfaction. There is no doubt that with this status, Li Ming can live here safely for a while. Thinking of this, Li Ming nodded vigorously and replied, okay. Hearing Li Ming's agreement, Robson and Elks smiled at the same time. Robson even stood up and said, since you agreed, I will report this to the Alliance headquarters. From now on, you will be a member of our Tillman people. Li Ming narrowed his eyes and looked at the other party, smiling without saying a word. Li Ming was still clear about the new members reporting to the Alliance headquarters. There will be 5 rotating officers at the Alliance headquarters, who will be dispatched by the 11-member star systems at regular intervals, to handle matters in the Alliance. The reporting is mainly to announce the Alliance's own strength growth, and also to confirm the information of new members. The most important point is the information of new members, because they are not first-level civilizations promoted from this civilization, so outsiders must be treated differently. Once a star system is determined to join, it cannot be changed. The Alliance will determine its fixed position. If this member withdraws from the star system in the future, then this member will not be able to join other member star systems. Li Ming didn't care about this, and he didn't mean to change star systems at will, so he didn't have to worry about it. Afterwards, Robertson arranged a place for Li Ming to live in a separate building. Li Ming didn't have any extra requirements for the building, as long as it was secluded enough. Naturally, there was only Li Ming in the whole building. Robertson also arranged some 7th level soldiers for Li Ming, but Li Ming politely refused them all. Those little bastards would only get in the way, and had no other use for Li Ming. In addition to the arrangement of the accommodation, Li Ming also obtained a copy of some topographic maps of the Tillmans. The topographic maps are basically similar to the aerospace maps. They are mainly used to understand the planetary layout of the Tillmans, including the offensive and defensive systems, the spacecraft systems, and some important institutions, the Star Room and the Material Room. Li Ming just accepted it with peace of mind, and did not look at it carefully, because Li Ming had other important things to do at this time. In a completely enclosed room, Li Ming sat cross-legged on the ground. This is already Li Ming's personal area. The entire rock building is, so Li Ming does not have to worry about being disturbed by other people. Sitting quietly on the ground, Li Ming moved his palm and took out a star capsule. After taking a look, he said to himself, it's rare to enter the first level civilization. I have to see what those things are. Chapter 317. Mountains and Seas, Eternal Clouds. The star capsule flashed, and the blue light continued to interweave and radiate. After a while, an object appeared in front of Li Ming. This object was square, like a big bowl, with grooves inside. It was the Liuanding that Li Ming had obtained. At the beginning, because the consciousness of the previous owner had always existed in this object, and Li Ming was a low-level civilization, he could not explore it. Now that Li Ming has successfully entered the advanced civilization, he naturally wants to see what it is. He raised his right hand and held the object in his hand. A group of soft green light overflowed from his palm and wrapped the Liuanding. With the ability of spiritual civilization, Li Ming began to understand this thing. After a few seconds, Li Ming nodded slightly. His eyes kept looking at the small tripod, and at the same time he said to himself, Liuan Candle Ding. Li Ming silently read out these 4 words. After some exploration, Li Ming found that the original name of this Liuanding was Liuan Candle Ding, and the word candle ranked the lowest among the utensils. Simply put, it is better than ordinary ones, but worse than better ones. It is not a good item. However, it was also very good for Li Ming to have such a good alchemy tool. As for the consciousness inside, it would be refined in a short time. After putting the Liuan candle cauldron aside, the star capsule in Li Ming's hand flashed blue light again, and something floated out. This thing was a cloak. As soon as his eyes saw the cloak, Li Ming's eyes lit up, and he was very excited and full of curiosity. This cloak was an item that Li Ming got from the ruins of Io. However, Li Ming's level was low at the time, and he could not understand the origin of this thing at all. Now he naturally had to take it out and study it carefully. This thing was different from the Liuan cauldron. Because it came from the ruins of Io, Li Ming also had a strong curiosity about it. Looking at it like this, Li Ming did not easily use his consciousness to explore it, but turned his left hand, and the blue flying dragon had formed in his palm. After taking another look at the cloak, Li Ming's left hand moved slightly, and the blue dragon flashed into the cloak. After the first level civilization, Li Ming's wisdom ability had been greatly improved. The original blue dragon might just replace Li Ming's eyes. Now, King Lang not only replaces Li Ming's eyes, but also consents for Li Ming. In other words, King Lang is the second Li Ming, and can also obtain other people's thoughts. King Lang entered the cloak in a flash, just like a fish entering the river, and disappeared in an instant. King Lang's entry is just like Li Ming's entry, but as soon as he entered, he felt a complex energy coming in and surrounding him, but when he looked closely, he was in another world. Fuck. Is this inside the cloak? Li Ming's mind suddenly buzzed, and he couldn't believe what he saw. There was another world in the cloak. This world in the cloak made Li Ming dumbfounded, but the most amazing thing was the natural rich energy here. This world is different from the real world. First of all, there is only a wide virtual ground here, and the ground is all made of energy accumulation, like a piece of light grid. It's like entering a digital world. The ground is made of small squares woven by light, like floor tiles, and in the sky high up, there are huge vortices, each of which is like a galaxy. The underground is a digital world, and the sky is a starry universe. Such a world is incredible. But as Li Ming sensed, many detailed information also entered his brain little by little. Shan He Hing Gan Shang. Li Ming opened his eyes wide, and his expression kept jumping and changing. Shan He Hing Gan Shang has one thing in common with Shan Kie, which is a storage place for pets or tamed beasts, but the difference is that Shan He Hing Gan Shang has a variety of energy springs, which are suitable for all kinds of beasts to live. The most important thing is that the energy springs in Shan He Hing Gan Shang can promote the growth and evolution of beasts. Simply put, Li Ming originally needed to refine beast soul pills or beast spirit pills to help Walker and more grow and evolve, but now, as long as they are placed in this Shan He Hing Gan Shang, they can absorb the energy inside and grow on their own. There are many nebular whirlpools in the sky of the inner world of Shan He Hing Gan Shang, and those whirlpools are energy springs one by one. Each whirlpool of different colors corresponds to a different energy spring, which can heal and enhance, which is extremely powerful. Seeing this, Li Ming waved his left hand and took back the azure dragon. A pair of eyes looked back and forth at the cloak in front of him, full of joy. Such good things are naturally very rare. However, these things need Li Ming to refine with his consciousness, and they cannot be used directly at the moment. This is why Li Ming is looking for a secluded place. Looking at the two things in front of him, he whispered, "Then refine these two things first, and then refine the artifact of Netung. In this way, my first level civilization will be stable." Li Ming has already practiced the star registration that needs to be cultivated on the Bergson star in the Croft galaxy. Now the only thing left is to refine these things. With this plan, Li Ming began to operate the three things in front of him. Li Ming was practicing here, and in the distant Hua Alliance headquarters, several senior executives were discussing something. The 3-star star system, ISAP, is the only alien life form in the middle system. It is a silicon-based life form alien, and is also recognized as the strongest galaxy civilization in the Milky Way. The headquarters of the Hua Alliance is located on ISAP. From space, ISAP looks like a blue-green gemstone planet, and this is indeed the case. This huge planet is formed by blue-green crystals. At this time, in a huge building on the planet, an alien with a head full of dark blue crystal blocks glanced at the two people opposite him and said, "Newcomers Millicent and Winslow, which star system are you going to be assigned to?" The two people opposite him both have long necks, small heads, huge eyes like transparent mirrors. One body is silver and the other body is black. After hearing what the crystal alien said, the silver eyes turned slightly, hesitated for a moment, and said, "Commander Yaba, now in our entire alliance, only the Tillmans and Enners are the weakest. This time, the Ruby Star Project can only choose one of these two star systems. In my opinion, it is better to give it to Enner." Huh? Why? The crystal alien Yaba turned his eyes and said. The silver alien continued, "It's like this. In our Hua Alliance, all member star systems are either powerful civilizations or technological civilizations. The Tillmans are an intelligent civilization, and their overall strength is weak. We have even discussed expelling them from the alliance. The black alien nodded again and again, and then said, Xenia is right. The Tillmans are an intelligent civilization, and their strength is too weak. Although the Enas only have 2 first-level civilizations, they are a technological civilization after all. Yarborough nodded slightly, but after hesitating for a while, he said, Xenia, Yeager, the reason why I want to talk to you two today is that in the entire alliance, only our 3-star systems are the strongest, and have a dominant position, so every decision we make is crucial. Just now, Robson has contacted me, and reported to me a new first-level civilization. Do you think it's inappropriate for us to expel them from the alliance at this time? Yarborough glanced at the 2 people in front of him again and said. The silver alien Xenia was startled when he heard this, and then looked at the black alien Yeager beside him. The 2 looked at each other for a while, and were also very surprised about this matter. Xenil hesitated for a while and said, Commander Abel is right, but if that's the case, we might as well follow the old rules to decide the last spot for the Ruby Planet project. Gigi nodded repeatedly, but didn't say much, just looked at Abel. Abel pondered for a while, then nodded slowly after a moment and said, then, we can only do this for now. While they were discussing, a round silver spaceship in the Fishfire system was flying towards the Great Fish 3 planet. However, in the main cabin of the spaceship, Adriana was staring at the operating table in front of her, with an extremely ugly expression. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318, Chased Here. It is indeed on the Tillmans' planet, but how could the Tillmans get Netan? Adriana looked puzzled and couldn't figure out the reason. If she couldn't figure it out, she naturally didn't think about it anymore. After all, this trip was just for Netan, and the rest was naturally unimportant. As the circular spacecraft continued to approach the Big Fish 3 planet, the Tillmans on the Big Fish 3 planet naturally noticed the existence of the silver spacecraft. Robson and Elks stood in front of the operating table, watching the spacecraft while showing doubts. Looking at the model of the spacecraft, it should be the Anis people of the Big Yan system. Why did they come to our Fishfire system? Delks said to himself in doubt, and his eyes quickly turned to Robson. Robson looked at it, and shook his head slightly, saying, no matter what the origin is, we are in the same alliance. We will meet when she arrives. Hearing this, Delks could only nod slightly, and said nothing more. At this moment, Li Ming was in his room, with his eyes slightly closed, his hands on his legs, and his whole body was wrapped in green light. The green light was like a flame that was constantly burning. After these flames overflowed from Li Ming's body, the flames continued to enter the black object on his head. The black object was Nirvana. The green shadows were all Li Ming's mental power. At this time, he had to use his consciousness to completely refine Nirvana. In this way, the artifact could completely belong to Li Ming. This kind of refining has lasted for a long time. For Li Ming now, time is naturally very sufficient. As a great magician, all Tillman people have to stay away from him, so there is no problem in practicing with peace of mind. The previous Liu Anding and Shan Heihing Shang have been completely refined by Li Ming, so now he can concentrate on refining the artifact Nirvana. Nirvana is basically full of Li Ming's consciousness and breath. After all, this is not the first time Li Ming has refined this thing. Moreover, Li Ming is now a first-level civilization, so his mental power has naturally increased greatly, and the refining speed has increased a lot. After several days of refining, the green flame on Li Ming's body gradually weakened and finally disappeared. The netting on his head also slowly floated, and came to Li Ming's eyes. Looking at the artifact in front of him, Li Ming showed a satisfied look, and said to himself, this artifact finally belongs to me. Artifacts are different from ordinary weapons. Refining can only determine the ownership of the weapon, but the use and ability of the artifact still need to be developed by the user. As for the artifact, Li Ming can use its basic ability. As for the more powerful ability, Li Ming will slowly develop it in the future. He raised his right hand slightly, and took netting in his hand. Before the smile on his face disappeared, a trembling buzz sound suddenly came from his ears, as if something exploded near this building. Li Ming raised his eyes, his face was heavy, and he stood up and walked out. At this moment, in the Tillman city, Robson and Elks were confronting Adriana. "I've been here for 2 days. I don't have enough patience now. If you don't hand it over, I will destroy it all," Adriana shouted angrily. Delks was about to take action, but was stopped by Robertson. After glancing at Adriana, he said coldly, "Adriana, don't push your luck. I didn't take action just now, because we are in the same alliance, but if you continue to be presumptuous, I will not be polite. Besides, you said that we should hand over the things, but you didn't say clearly what they were. Could it be you want to deliberately cause trouble?" Robertson's tone became even tougher. Adriana then snorted coldly and said, "What it is, I don't tell you. You all know it in your heart." Robertson was even more confused after hearing this, but his eyes were more angry. Just when he was about to say something, Li Ming suddenly walked over from not far away. "They don't know, but I do." Li Ming looked at Adriana with contempt. As soon as she saw Li Ming, Adriana's face changed drastically. Just as she was about to say something, her figure suddenly froze. She sensed the aura of Li Ming's first level civilization. Robertson was also surprised to see Li Ming, but after noticing the look in Adriana's eyes, when she looked at Li Ming, he seemed to sense that something was wrong. Adriana slowly raised her right hand, looked at Li Ming coldly, and said, "I didn't expect you are still alive, and you have even reached the first level civilization." This sentence invisibly revealed that Adriana knew Li Ming, and it was before she arrived at the Fishfire star system. Li Ming continued to walk forward until he was more than 10 meters away from Adriana. He looked at her quietly and said, "I didn't expect you to chase me here. From the outer system to the middle system, you are really persistent. To be honest, this invisibly makes me want to kill you more." Adriana's eyes twitched slightly, and the long sword in her right hand was slowly raised. But before he could do anything, Robertson suddenly shouted angrily, "Adriana, this is the residential area of the Tillman people. I advise you not to mess around." At this time, Adriana's eyes only had Li Ming in them. Her eyes seemed to have locked onto Li Ming, and she said at the same time, "This man is the enemy of our Hua Alliance. You two can either help me catch him, or just shut up." Robertson became even angrier after hearing this. Adriana's rude remarks, based on the status of her galaxy and the alliance, were naturally unpleasant, but Robertson couldn't afford to offend her. The current Tillman civilization was in danger in the alliance, so he couldn't afford to provoke her. In this way, he dared not speak out his anger, and could only endure humiliation and submit, which was the most painful in advanced civilizations. Li Ming couldn't care about the entanglement between them. He hated the man who almost killed him at the beginning, and now was naturally the best opportunity. As he clenched his fists, his body surface flashed with golden light. It was an electromagnetic wave with a higher energy density. The sound of crackling echoed around his body, and the momentum was amazing. Seeing this, Adriana's eyes widened, and the long sword in her right hand slashed down directly. Suddenly, a white light flashed, and a sword wave broke through the air. This sword wave was in a vertical posture and directly approached Li Ming, in a crescent shape, with one end still attached to the ground. The end attached to the ground even left a deep gully on the ground. Pa! A light sound was heard, and a layer of green phantom flames burned on Li Ming's body surface. At the same time, a phantom hand stretched out from the green flames, and the sword wave was directly grasped in the hand. Adriana's eyes widened a little when she saw this. Robert and Elks also changed their faces. They couldn't believe what they saw. After all, the sword wave was a first level flowing dust weapon. Even ordinary first level civilizations could only dodge and dared not take it head on, but it was grabbed by Li Ming. "What's wrong with this guy?" Adriana was shocked. Li Ming smiled lightly, and the golden arc of electricity on his body flowed along the green light and came to the sword wave. The original white light sword wave now had golden arcs jumping on the surface, and its power was several times greater than before. After the electric light condensed, Li Ming's green shadow suddenly threw it far away. The sword wave with golden arcs was thrown back again, but it was completely different from before. Not only was it powerful, but its speed was also extremely amazing. The ears only heard the arcs jumping wildly, and the sword wave was in front of them in just a flash. This amazing speed made Adriana open her mouth wide. She didn't dare to think too much, and waved the long sword in her hand to block it. The sound of rumbling spread out, and along with the violent vibration, a ball of white light also flashed, and I felt the airflow generated by the energy constantly blowing the dust around. Even the rock building in the distance was shaking slightly. Looking from the sky, this area has been completely shrouded by the breath of energy, either white light or dust. After more than 10 seconds, the dust dissipated, the white light faded, and Adriana stood there quietly without moving. She was not injured on her body, but the sword in her hand had broken into 2 pieces, indicating that it was damaged. Chapter 319 There is no one I dare not kill. Li Ming looked at the other party with contempt and said, "This is only 1/4 of my strength. You are really vulnerable." 1/4. Adriana suddenly whispered to herself, but after thinking about it, she suddenly looked at Li Ming with anger and shouted, "Impossible. Level 1 civilization, how is it possible?" Before she finished speaking, her body suddenly froze in place and could not move. Li Ming in the distance raised his right hand and pointed his palm at the other party. Adriana looked at Li Ming's palm, then looked at her own body. Her 2 arms could not help but move closer to her body, and her legs were also merging little by little, as if there was a force pushing her to take a stand at attention posture. Adriana was shocked and quickly used all her energy to break free from the strange bondage. The silver surface of her body was flashing. Adriana's energy could only emit a faint light on the surface of her body, but it could not prevent her body from being bound. Against the backdrop of the white light on her body, strips of golden light emerged from her body. The golden light was initially in the form of smoke, but after a few seconds it quickly condensed into a golden light chain. Li Ming can use energy and change his abilities as he pleases. Even some very low level abilities can burst out with great power in Li Ming's place. For ordinary aliens, no matter what kind of civilization or what kind of attack form, it will not change. Sword waves are sword waves, and electromagnetic waves are electromagnetic waves. But Li Ming is different. All the energy in Li Ming's body is injected into his own mental power. This also enhances Li Ming's control over the attack form. In addition, Li Ming's 6-domain star book is a strengthening star book with a total of 6 pages. Li Ming has practiced 2 pages, and the strengthening of his own abilities is extraordinary. Therefore, Li Ming's comprehensive strength is very terrifying. Adriana could only let Li Ming's chains control her under the restraint of the golden light chain at this time, and she had no power to fight back. Li Ming looked at the other party coldly and slowly walked towards him. Wait. Li Ming had just taken 2 steps when Robertson, who was not far away, suddenly raised his hand and called him. His figure paused in place, his eyes turned slightly, and he looked at Robertson. Robson came to Li Ming's side quickly and naturally looked at Li Ming with admiration. After a slight hesitation, he said, "Li Ming, I can see that there are indeed some personal grudges between you and Adriana, but you are now the great magician of our Tillman people after all. If you kill her like this, if the people of the Dayan system know about it, it will be difficult for us to explain to the Alliance," Robson said with some concern. Li Ming didn't seem to care about it, as if he had already made arrangements in his mind. But before Li Ming could explain, a burst of laughter suddenly came. Ha 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 ha. The voice came from Adriana, as if she had heard Robson's whisper. Looking at this place with her eyes, she said coldly, "Robertson, we are all from the Hua Alliance. If I die here like this, then you, the Tillman people, I'm afraid you won't have a good life. Killing a fellow ally, this sin, I'm afraid you can't bear it." Hehe. As she said this, Adriana also laughed coldly. Hearing the laughter, Li Ming's anger suddenly rose. His stern eyes suddenly turned to Adriana. Adriana was also startled by Li Ming's gaze, fearing that Li Ming would really kill her. However, after a few seconds, she felt relieved when she saw that Li Ming did not make any move. "Humph, you dare not kill me," Adriana said. Robertson hated Adriana's attitude, but he was more helpless. Li Ming would naturally not let her go. Cold light flashed in his cold eyes, and his stern expression was full of murderous intent. He said coldly, "Nonsense. Anyone who provokes me, Li Ming, will be skinned, even if he is the leader of the Alliance." While speaking, He raised his right hand suddenly, and the golden electric light in his palm suddenly flashed. Crack. A dazzling golden light flashed, and a thunder shot out from Li Ming's palm. He felt his ears buzzing, and a dazzling white light in front of his eyes. After a few seconds, the white light dissipated, and the original Adriana's figure had completely disappeared. The whole person was like suddenly evaporating, without a trace. Seeing this, Robertson couldn't help but panic. He looked at Li Ming in horror and said, "Li Ming, you are in trouble." Li Ming didn't care at all. He smiled and said, "Grand Mage Robertson, you don't have to panic. You saw it just now. Adriana didn't even have a hair left. How could anyone know that she died here?" Robertson paused after hearing this, and after looking around, he couldn't help but be stunned. Li Ming's blow did make Adriana disappear instantly without a trace. Robertson was indeed relieved after seeing this, but after thinking carefully, he looked at Li Ming with admiration. As a first-level civilization, Li Ming killed his opponent with a single move. Even a 1.1 level civilization could not do this. "Ah, that's right, that's right." Robertson seemed to have just reacted and said repeatedly. Li Ming smiled and turned his eyes to a round spaceship not far away, saying, "Now the only trace that can prove that Adriana has been here is that spaceship. Grand Mage Robertson should know what to do." Robertson followed Li Ming's gaze and also looked at the spaceship. Then he nodded slightly and said, "I understand this. I will send someone to deal with it immediately." Li Ming then nodded slightly and said, "After dealing with this spaceship, there will be no traces. This is called death without evidence on my home planet." Death. Death without evidence? Robertson didn't seem to understand what these four meant. Li Ming smiled faintly and did not intend to explain in detail. He looked at the rock building in the distance of the construction area and suddenly thought of something in his mind and said, "You will understand this in the future, so let's not talk about this for now. By the way, I plan to go to the star certification room now. After all, I'm also an intelligent civilization. Since I have joined the Tillman people, I still want to learn the advanced abilities here." Li Ming then said. Robertson smiled lightly and said, "Of course there is no problem with this. Then let Delks accompany you. Leave the things here to me." As he spoke, Robertson's eyes even glanced at Delks. As soon as he saw Robertson's eyes, Delks immediately understood, walked up quickly, and said, "I will lead the way for you. Please come this way." Li Ming's expression did not change. After nodding slightly, he turned and walked away. Li Ming naturally knew the location of the star certification room, because Li Ming had a distribution map of this place in his hand. It would be fine for Delks to follow him. After all, in front of the wisdom eye, their thoughts were all under Li Ming's control. He walked along the street in the middle of the rock building until he stopped in front of a building that was only a dozen meters high. This rock building was the shortest among many rock buildings, and there was also a portal at the bottom of the building. However, the rock was too small, which made Li Ming feel a little puzzled. After all, it was a place to store star records, and it should be the most important institution among the Tillmans. Such a simple little house was too sloppy, giving people the impression that there would not be many rare star records in it. Although he did not hold out much hope, he had to take a look, since he was here. He entered from the portal at the bottom, and came to a wide hall the next moment. There were rows of star record racks around the hall, and there was indeed a square metal object in the middle of the hall, like a small room. Li Ming did not care, and his eyes quickly looked at the star record racks around it. Delks also explained immediately, "Here is all the star records of our Tillmans." Li Ming just nodded without saying anything, and walked slowly. He looked around, and found that there were 5 star record racks in total, placed next to the 5 walls of the room, corresponding to each other. The star books above were arranged neatly from low to high. Li Ming walked slowly, while checking with his wisdom eyes. With the ability of wisdom eyes, Li Ming could get a general understanding of the contents of these star books from the surface, just like looking at the title of each book. Chapter 320, Advanced Magic Star. As he walked and looked, he shook his head slightly from time to time, with a look of disappointment on his face. The star classes here are indeed those of advanced civilizations, and there are also many other tribal abilities of intelligent civilizations, but none of them can catch Li Ming's eye, just like Li Ming just looked at this building outside, which is disappointing. Of course. There are also some extremely powerful abilities among these star classes, but there are always some restrictions, so they are not what Li Ming wants. The powerful star classes have restrictions, and the weak star classes make Li Ming have no desire to learn, so he can only sigh and shake his head, feeling disappointed. Li Ming's performance was naturally seen by Delks, and he was also a little puzzled in his heart. After a while, Li Ming looked through all 5-star class racks. At this time, Li Ming's face was not good, and it was obvious that he had not gained anything from this trip. What? There is no star class you like? Delks asked in surprise, as if he didn't believe that there was nothing in this star classroom that the other party could like. Li Ming smiled lightly, and just when he was about to say something, he didn't open his mouth. He could only sigh and shake his head, and walked out directly. Delks became even more puzzled, but when he saw Li Ming about to leave, he suddenly raised his hand and called out, "Wait." Li Ming paused in place, turned his head, and looked at Delks. Delks seemed to be hesitant to speak, and after thinking for a while, he replied, Since you don't like the star registration here, then we have another star registration here. Do you want to take a look?" "Oh." Li Ming immediately became interested. His eyes turned slightly, and he said, "If it's convenient, it would be best to take a look." Delks' expression suddenly became serious, and he turned his body and came to the square metal object in the middle of the room. He raised his hand and pointed at it, and the ripples on the metal flashed slightly, and a portal suddenly appeared. Li Ming was slightly surprised to see this. There was actually a portal hidden here, which made Li Ming feel a little surprised. "Please come this way." Delks made a gesture of invitation and said. Li Ming smiled slightly and walked over. A flash of light appeared, and Li Ming entered the portal. When the light flashed again, Li Ming had already walked out of another portal, and Delks was following behind him. Looking around, Li Ming was shocked, and his eyes immediately stopped at a focal point in the air. This is an underground cave, with cave walls and stalactites everywhere. These also told Li Ming that the Big Fish 3 planet was also a violent planet before. The black and red rocks flashed with a faint light and released a little energy. It was really weird. The entire cave was tens of meters high and hundreds of meters wide. Some places were as smooth as a mirror and slightly reflective. In the air of the cave, a 1 meter long and wide meteorite was suspended, like an enlarged version of a pebble. It was black and glowing. The surface was densely engraved with various alien characters. Those characters were all light blue, like blue crystals. Li Ming's eyes were attracted by this thing. Delks took 2 steps forward, looked at the meteorite floating in the air, and said, "This is the most precious star book of our Tillman people. This star book has been passed down among our people, but has never been used." Li Ming's mind turned when he heard this, and he looked at the other party and asked, "Since it is an inherited star book, why don't you practice and use it?" Delks sighed slightly when he heard this, and said, "This star book is different from other star books. It only has characters but no consciousness. If you want to learn the abilities in it, you must first understand the meaning of those characters. It's a pity. Since I knew about this thing, no member of the tribe has been able to learn the abilities above." Li Ming nodded slightly when he heard this. Delks then continued, "Since you have joined us Tillmans, you can naturally see this star class, but whether you can learn it is another matter." Li Ming naturally understood the meaning of his words. After a slight smile, he replied, "Although I have joined the Tillmans, I'm an outsider after all. I'm very grateful that you can let me see this inheritance. Whether I can learn the abilities in it or not, I will remember your generosity to me." Li Ming said what was in his heart without reservation. Delks just smiled lightly and didn't care. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Then you can watch it by yourself. I won't accompany you." Having said that, Delks really turned around and left. Watching the other party walk out of here, Li Ming's slightly narrowed eyes blinked. Under his wise eyes, what Delks thought was in Li Ming's grasp. For the current Tillmans, the most important thing is their position in the alliance. This will determine the survival of the Tillmans in the central system. Once this race is kicked out of the alliance, it will inevitably decline, and the consequences will be disastrous. The appearance of Li Ming undoubtedly gave them a life-saving straw, and naturally they had to do their best to grasp it. Li Ming didn't care about these. As long as his goal was achieved, it didn't matter where he was. He turned his eyes and looked at the huge star registering stone in the air. His eyes were fixed on it, and his body slowly floated up, and he didn't stop until he came to the edge of the star registering stone. As the distance got closer, Li Ming's eyes could see more clearly. There were indeed a large number of characters on this star registering stone, and Li Ming had never seen them before. However, Li Ming's eyes narrowed slightly, and a green light flashed. It was the ability of the wisdom eye. Under the wisdom eye, the characters gradually became clear, and some content was also floating out of the characters little by little. Although it could be understood a little, it was still a bit slow, which was far from the speed at which Li Ming read the star registering before. Li Ming then focused his eyes, and the black eyeballs turned slightly in his eyes, and suddenly changed. The round black eyeballs turned into two corners, which were like two triangles put together. Simply put, the appearance was like a compass on a compass, and the whole was green, which was extremely strange. This performance was the result of Li Ming's 6-domain enhanced starbook practice. Regarding the practice of the 6-domain enhanced starbook, there was no big change at first, but it made Li Ming gain the ability to learn quickly and enhance his abilities. Later, Li Ming practiced the first full page of the 6-domain enhanced starbook. At this time, Li Ming's eyeballs had changed from black to golden water droplets. After entering the first level civilization, Li Ming had completely practiced the second page of the 6-domain enhanced starbook. Therefore, the eyeballs of both eyes became green and two-cornered, which greatly enhanced Li Ming's ability. Under the blessing of the 6-domain enhanced starbook, Li Ming's wisdom eyes naturally became more powerful, and even reading the contents of the starbook in front of him became faster and smoother. The information about this starbook also entered Li Ming's mind bit by bit. This star is also a magic star, but it is different from any magic star that Li Ming has seen before, and the abilities in it are also unheard of by Li Ming. It can be said that after reading this magic star, Li Ming's cognition of the magic tribe of intelligent civilization was completely overturned. In the intelligent civilization, although there are multiple ability tribes, including summoning, element, time, and space, etc., these abilities are actually branches of magic. It was only later that one of the abilities was taken out and expanded separately, and it became a tribe. The star in front of him is completely different. The abilities in it are mainly magic tribes, but some abilities reflect the abilities of other tribes, as if it is a fusion of ancient magic. For example, the instant light slash in it is to move a certain distance in an instant and give the enemy a fatal blow. Although the instant movement distance of this ability is very small, it also reflects the teleportation ability of the space-time tribe. In addition, this star has emitted electromagnetic waves and directly uses light energy to attack. These various abilities have deeply attracted Li Ming's attention, making Li Ming look happy and satisfied. Li Ming also began to count and browse the abilities in the star. Elemental clone, light, instant slash, demon shadow incarnation, elemental summoning, witch shadow invisible. Each ability has the shadow of other tribes, but they are all magic and extremely powerful. It's just not easy to practice. Even if Li Ming has 6 domains of enhanced star status, it will take some time. But since so many powerful abilities have been discovered by Li Ming, he naturally has to work hard to learn. Chapter 321. Persuade Li Ming. After recording all the contents of the star registration in his mind, Li Ming could not wait to practice. He landed slowly, his eyes slightly closed, and practice had already begun. At the same time, Robertson and Elks were standing in front of an operating table and talking to an alien whose head was full of crystal blocks. Commander Abel, are you saying that the Enna people have added 2 more first-level civilizations? Robertson said in surprise. The figure of Abel from Isaiah was in the operating table. After nodding slightly, he said, so the last place for the Ruby Star project this time is between you and the Enna people. Do you want to participate or give up? You need to give me a reply as soon as possible, because the Ruby Star project will start soon. Robertson fell into deep thought after hearing this, and his eyes could not help but look at Delks. The Tillmans and the Enna people are the weakest in the alliance. Each of them has only 2 first-level civilizations, so their status is the lowest. Li Ming's arrival originally made Robertson full of confidence. but he didn't expect that the inner people actually added 2 first-level civilizations, which made Robertson a little passive. After thinking for a moment, Robson slowly replied, "Well, let's discuss it first, and then get back to you." Yarborough nodded slightly, and said and then said no more. The connection was then disconnected, leaving only Robson and Elks in front of the console, standing there in a daze. Delks frowned, thought for a long time, and said, "The inner people have added to first-level civilizations, which means there is one more of us. Could it be that this time on the Ruby Star, we..." Robertson also had a helpless look on his face. He paced back and forth on the spot, thinking in his mind. After a moment, he said, "I think we should discuss it with Li Ming, and then decide whether to confront the inner people." Delks waved his hand angrily and said sternly, "Even if Li Ming agrees, so what? There are 2 of them." Robertson continued, "From the perspective of the Alliance, the Ruby Star plan does not require a certain civilization to not participate, but it is a matter of the strength of this civilization. In other words, even if we really can't beat the inner people, our strength has also improved a lot. Maybe they will allow us to participate." Hearing what Robertson said, Delks' expression relaxed. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Is this really possible?" Robson shook his head slightly, and his eyes were naturally uncertain, but he still said, "It's hard to say whether it's possible, but we have to try it. It's better than doing nothing." Delks sighed and nodded helplessly, saying, "Okay, we can only try it. Wait here, I'll go to Li Ming to discuss this matter." Robson briefly explained and left quickly. In front of a short building, the portal flickered slightly, and Li Ming walked out of it with a smile on his face. At this time, Li Ming had already cultivated all the abilities of the star, but these abilities have not been cultivated to the extreme, and need to be improved slowly in the future. Just as Li Ming was about to return to the rock building where he lived, a figure in the distance was also walking towards him. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he couldn't help whispering, "Robertson?" He looked puzzled, but his figure did not stop, and he still walked forward quickly. Robson, who was walking towards him, also recognized Li Ming at once, and walked forward with a smile. "Have you been in the star categorization room all these days?" Robson asked in surprise. Li Ming chuckled and said, "The star categorization of the Tillmans is profound and extensive. I was so fascinated by it that I just watched it for a while longer and forgot the time." Hehe. Robson also smiled and said, "It's okay, there's a long time to come. You can watch it whenever you want." Li Ming also smiled in agreement, but with his slightly narrowed eyes, he could already see the other party's purpose in looking for him. After laughing, Robertson continued, "It's like this. Recently, the Alliance has an activity plan that is of vital importance to all civilized galaxies, so I want to ask for your opinion on whether to participate in this activity. After all, you are also a senior member of our Tillman people." Li Ming smiled lightly, hesitated for a moment, and said, "Grand Mage Robertson is really polite. After all, I'm an outsider and I know nothing about the rules here. You and Elks will decide on all the activity plans." Robert's expression changed when he heard this, showing a bit of helplessness, and then continued, "Now that things have come to this, I won't hide some things. After all, you will know sooner or later. To be honest, although we Tillmans belong to the Huai Alliance, the status of our galaxy civilization in the Alliance is indeed not high. I hope you don't mind." Robertson continued. Li Ming still had a smile on his face, but just nodded and said nothing. Li Ming had known this information through the Wisdom Eye a long time ago, but if Li Ming did not have the Wisdom Eye and just learned it, he would naturally feel deceived, but there was no need to care about it now. Robson then continued, "In the Alliance, there are many shared resources. The development of these resources is generally a joint development of all the galaxies in the Alliance. Some places need to be strong enough to participate, because these resources often determine the future development of galaxy civilizations. In the near future, the Alliance will prepare to go to Hangayu Star to develop the resources there, so I think this is a good opportunity, so I asked for your opinion." Robson continued, his eyes constantly watching Li Ming's expression. Li Ming had no interest in the things in the Alliance, but after hearing about resource development, he still became somewhat interested. He opened his mouth and asked, "Hangayu Star? What resources are there?" Robson smiled slightly and explained, Hangayu star, there is a lot of mutant energy, but this mutant energy cannot be used by living things. It can only be used to make tools, and every once in a while, the energy of Hangayu star will overflow and gather, and it is very likely to form Hangren. Hangren? Li Ming's expression was lifted, his face was full of surprise, and his eyes widened a little. Seeing this, Robertson was also surprised by Li Ming's expression, but he soon smiled and nodded, and said, yes, the ruby energy of Ruby Star can also be used to make tools, so if we can participate in the Ruby Star plan this time, it is possible to get Hangren, which is a big deal for improving the overall strength of our Tillman. Li Ming's eyes were already rolling in his sockets at this moment, and he kept looking at Robertson. There is no doubt that Hangren still has a huge attraction to Li Ming. Thinking of this, Li Ming said, since it is good for improving the strength of our Tillman people, then we will naturally participate. Hearing Li Ming's answer, Robertson was naturally excited, but when it came to participating, Robertson's expression changed and hesitant. After hesitating for a while, he said, it is indeed time to participate, but there are alliance rules in the alliance. This time, we need to compete for quotas. Only after we get the quotas, we can be qualified to participate. Li Ming paused and narrowed his eyes slightly. Some information in Robertson's mind had been detected, and the information about the competition between the Tillman people and the Ena people was also obtained by Li Ming. It is not easy to get this quota, but when he thought of Hangren, Li Ming immediately made up his mind and said, since it is a quota competition, it means that we still have a chance. No matter what the result is, we will naturally try it. Ah, that's great. Robertson suddenly shouted excitedly. Li Ming's answer was exactly what Robertson thought, and his face was full of smiles again. Since you can agree, that's great. How about this? You go back and prepare. I will arrange the spaceship right away. After all, the time for the Ruby Star plan is getting closer and closer, so it's better to do it quickly. Robertson said hastily, as if he was going to strike, while the iron is hot, fearing that Li Ming would suddenly regret it. Li Ming smiled and nodded, and replied, I'll be waiting at my residence. When you need to leave, just let me know. Okay, I'll arrange it right away. With that, Robertson turned around and left in a hurry. Chapter 322, Silicon-based life on Isaiah. Li Ming looked calm and returned to his residence. The so-called preparation was unnecessary for Li Ming, but he still had to make some arrangements. Li Ming had completely refined the Shanhei Hingayan Shang, so he put on the cloak, and some of the beasts on Li Ming's body naturally had to be put into it. In addition to Walker and more, Li Ming also had the sealed turbid clone, the magic horn golden fungus beast, and an egg found on an alien planet. These things naturally had to be thrown into the Shanhei Hingayan Shang. Shanhei Hingayan Shang has sufficient energy, which allows these beasts to grow, evolve, and mutate without the need for elixirs. It can be said that it has powerful abilities. More importantly, this Shanhei Hingayan Shang has been completely refined by Li Ming. That is, the energy inside all contains Li Ming's consciousness. Regardless of whether those beasts belonged to Li Ming before, as long as they are in Hingayan Shang and absorb the energy in Hingayan Shang, they will inevitably be eroded by Li Ming's consciousness and will eventually take Li Ming as their master. After doing all this, Li Ming sat cross-legged on the ground with his mind focused, waiting for news from Robertson. A few days later, a huge spaceship was parked in the air above the Tillman's construction area. The spaceship was in the shape of a mountain, hundreds of meters long and wide, covering a large area of the sky in the construction area. And right below the building, 3 figures were walking slowly, heading for the bottom of the building. These 3 people were Li Ming, Robertson and Elks. When they came to the bottom of the spaceship, a blue beam of light shot down from the spaceship, shining on the 3 people. Under the energy of the beam, the 3 people slowly rose into the spaceship little by little. This trip was to the headquarters of the Hua Alliance, the 3 systems, and the Isaiah Star. Li Ming didn't care about the flight and transmission of the spaceship. This was all the business of Robertson and Elks, and Li Ming just stayed quietly in a cabin with his eyes closed to rest. As long as he had free time, Li Ming still had to practice the star status he had just obtained. The time for practice often passed quickly. While Li Ming was concentrating on practice, the spaceship he was in was already teleporting quickly along the predetermined transmission route. After an unknown amount of time, the spacecraft's transmission suddenly stopped. Li Ming, who had been practicing, opened his eyes slightly, stood up and walked outside. When he came to the main cabin, there was already a blue-green planet in front of the operating table, which was Isaiah. At this time, Li Ming's eyes were already immersed in this planet, and his eyes occasionally looked at Robson and Elks. Information about Isaiah emerged little by little. The strongest civilization in the universe, the Isaias, are also different from ordinary aliens, because most alien life forms are carbon-based life forms, while the Isaias are silicon-based life forms. In terms of life characteristics, silicon-based life forms are fundamentally superior to carbon-based life forms. This type of life is very rare, because it is almost impossible for such life forms to exist in a first-level civilization, and it is only possible to exist in galaxies with more energy. Even if it exists, it is a coincidence and very rare. But thinking of the Isaias, Li Ming also thought of Mo. When Li Ming talked with Mo, he learned that Mo's Wukong ability came from the Isaias. Wukong belongs to the star clan of the 6 domains Mangsing. Like Li Ming's wisdom ability, both belong to the advanced abilities and spiritual civilization. After all, Li Ming has been using the wisdom eye, which has been of great help to Li Ming. If he can get the Wukong ability, it will undoubtedly be the best for Li Ming. When I first learned about the Isaias from Mo, they seemed to be a high-ranking existence. I didn't expect to see them so soon. At this time, the spacecraft has accepted the ground control from Isaiah. Next, the spacecraft will enter a fixed position autonomously without any operation. Isaiah is huge, 4 or 5 times the size of the Earth. At this moment, above a crystal area of Isaiah, a huge spacecraft is parked steadily in the air. There are buildings on the ground. These buildings are irregular, prismatic, and of different sizes, like a bouquet of flowers, one piece at a time. The huge spacecraft in the air is circular, and there are many other spacecrafts around the spacecraft. The surrounding spacecraft are smaller than the circular spacecraft in the center. Among them, the spacecraft that Li Ming is riding is one of them. Isaiah is the headquarters of the Hua Alliance. This area on the planet is where the main organization of the headquarters is located. The spacecraft in the air is from various civilized galaxies, and the crystal building below is the permanent residence of the prosperous headquarters. After the spacecraft stopped in the air, all the aliens who came here took the aircraft to the building complex below. Li Ming, Robson and Elks took a spacecraft and went straight down. During the flight, all the appearances of the city came into view. Because the buildings here are all crystal clear crystal blocks, they look very beautiful. The road between the buildings is also made of crystal blocks, and a large number of people are walking on it. These people are naturally from various civilized galaxies. The aircraft landed next to a building. There are fixed parking spaces here, and many aircraft have been parked. After getting off the aircraft and stepping on the smooth crystal road, Li Ming's eyes immediately looked at the huge building in front of him. Crystal blocks like bouquets of flowers were scattered everywhere, each of which was 100 meters high and extremely huge. Robson looked at the building in front of him and said, "This is the meeting building of the Hua Alliance." Li Ming nodded slightly, his eyes still looking at the huge crystal building. In Li Ming's previous cognition, crystal blocks should be some kind of objects rich in huge energy. So many crystal blocks in front of him made Li Ming dazzled, but as long as he carefully sensed it, Li Ming would realize that this was actually a kind of stone, and it was completely different from the mutant crystal and the colorful crystal. Energy crystal is like a block solidified by gas. It has a huge energy density, but it will also dissipate. The place where energy crystals can be condensed must have a certain degree of energy density. These blue-green crystal block buildings in front of him are no different from stones. However, when it comes to silicon-based life, Li Ming still has some cognition. Li Ming also found his cognition of silicon-based life from the Beast illustration book. In the illustration book, there is a kind of wild beast that belongs to silicon-based life, so it also describes the characteristics of silicon-based life in detail. As long as it is a life form, it must collect, store and use energy from the external environment. In carbon-based organisms, the most basic compound for storing energy is carbohydrates, as well as various life-sustaining energies. Silicon-based organisms can directly convert light energy into electrical energy to maintain their life activities. Simply put, the computers currently used by humans use silicon as chips. If this computer is more advanced and develops into an intelligent computer, it will be silicon-based life. Generally speaking, this type of life is rare and powerful relative to the Milky Way. With this in mind, Li Ming has followed Robson and others into the building. There is no portal outside the first floor of the building, but there are many portals deep in the hall of the first floor, and each portal has a corresponding position. Some can only enter, and some can only exit. Basically all are one-way portals. Robson seems to be very familiar with this place, and directly took Li Ming into one of the portals. With a flash of light, the figure appeared again in a closed room. The room is spacious and huge, and there is a completely transparent wall from which you can see the outside world, like a window. There is also a small operating table in the middle of the room, on which blue light interweaves and flashes, and various information about the Alliance continues to appear. Li Ming glanced casually outside the transparent window, then turned and came to the operating table. Robson smiled and said, "You can check the information about the various institutions of the Hawaii Alliance here. You should take a look." Li Ming nodded without saying anything, staring at the operating table in front of him, and various information entered his mind. There are indeed many institutions here, including meetings, operations, resource management, free trade, etc. These are not only important institutions of the Alliance, but also important platforms for members of various galaxies of the Alliance. Chapter 323 Energy Competition. Li Ming only took a quick look and had no interest in these institutions. While Li Ming was checking, a blue light suddenly flashed on the console and a message was transmitted. Hearing the sound, Robertson and Elks hurriedly surrounded him. The Alliance meeting is about to begin. All member representatives are requested to enter the venue immediately. Upon seeing this message, Robertson smiled and nodded, saying, "It seems that we have come at the right time. Let's go and take a look at the venue." As he said this, Robertson turned around and walked towards the portal not far away. Delks and Li Ming followed closely, after hesitating for a while. After passing through the portal, he felt a blue light flash on his body and came to a new place. As soon as he entered here, Li Ming narrowed his eyes and frowned slightly. This was not a room or a cabin, but a huge space. The entire space was shrouded in darkness, with only a dozen places flashing with faint light. Li Ming looked down and saw that he, Robertson and Elks were on an irregular and floating floor tile. Each floor tile is only 1 foot long and wide. Dozens of them are piled together to form an irregular pattern. Although it is not big, it is more than enough for 3 people to stand on it. These floor tiles are light yellow, emitting a faint light, illuminating a small area nearby. There are many such existences nearby. Li Ming scanned them with his eyes and found a total of 11. There are exactly 11 galaxy civilizations, and 3 people stand on each one. It is quite even, but the distance between them seems very far. With ordinary eyes, you can only roughly see the faint light and human figures, and other details are completely unclear. Looking at this space, Li Ming's eyes moved slightly, but he could guess that this is probably the product of some kind of technological civilization. There is endless darkness above his head, and there is also endless darkness under the floor tiles. It seems to be in the dark universe, which is very wonderful. Just as Li Ming was observing these, a voice suddenly came clearly. This meeting is mainly to resolve the implementation plan for the Ruby Star project, and the number of participants for each member. The voice was deep and powerful, but Li Ming didn't know where it came from. However, Alliance members like Robertson naturally knew that the voice came from the acting leader of the Alliance, the ISAIA commander Abel. There are 5 rotating members in the Alliance, but Abel is not on duty and is permanent. Among the members of our Hawaii Alliance, only the Tillmans and Enners are relatively weak, but recently their galaxies have new first-level civilizations joining, so after discussion, we decided to let them have a duel. Abel continued. Li Ming was surprised when he heard about the duel, and his eyes turned to look at Robertson beside him. Robertson saw the meaning of Li Ming's eyes and said quickly, "The duel here is not a fight. After all, they are all in the same alliance. Fighting will damage the unity between the alliances, so the so-called duel is the comparison of the energy in the bodies of the dueling personnel. Li Ming nodded slightly and said nothing. Li Ming didn't care whether it was a fight or a competition of energy, so he didn't care. Robertson raised his hand and pointed at the void in front of him. It seemed that he was pointing at the air, but his fingertips suddenly flashed with blue light, and the light was intertwined. A message had been sent. A few seconds later, Yaburo's voice sounded again. "Since you are ready, let's start." After this voice, Robertson smiled and turned to look at Li Ming. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Just release the energy comparison. As for the victory or defeat." Li Ming smiled slightly and said, "Don't worry, I already understand the rules, and I know what to do." Hearing Li Ming's answer, Robertson nodded with satisfaction and said no more. As he said this, Li Ming turned his eyes and saw a person floating out from one of the places where the light was flashing. The distance was too far for Li Ming to see clearly, but the next moment, the bricks under Li Ming's feet suddenly slowly broke away. Li Ming's figure did not move, allowing the bricks to carry Li Ming to float away. When it was close to the middle position, the floating bricks stopped. At this moment, the bricks under his feet suddenly shot out rays of light, which rose vertically from the edge of the bricks, surrounding Li Ming like a light curtain. There was a blue ring in the light curtain fixed in front of Li Ming. Li Ming glanced at it and understood the intention. The ring is where the energy is injected. It will not consume energy here, but will only test the amount of energy. Just put your hand on the ring and you can start. Similarly, the person sent by the Enna people is Millicent. Millicent has a level 1.1 civilization, but the light curtain surrounding her is red. After looking at the red ring with both eyes, he raised his palm and pressed it directly. As soon as his hand was placed on it, a huge character suddenly appeared on the top of the red light curtain. It was a digital logo. Although the person in the light curtain could not be seen clearly, the number on the top of the light curtain was very obvious, and people from all the surrounding galaxies could see it very clearly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 11. The number finally stopped at 11. Li Ming was also surprised to see this number, and at the same time, he heard a discussion of other civilized galaxies. Class 1.1 civilization? Then the Ennas will definitely win. With a class 1.1 civilization, the status of the Ennas will be different from before. Although it is unknown which civilization sent the message, the voice of this system is shared, which surprised Li Ming. These words just show that the civilization that is competing with Li Ming is a class 1.1 civilization. Robson and Elks, who were far away, couldn't help but sigh slightly after seeing the red number 11. It turned out to be a class 1.1 civilization. Delks exclaimed. Robson shook his head slightly, without saying a word. His face was full of disappointment, as if the defeat was already decided. But at this moment, Li Ming gently placed his palm on the blue ring. Li Ming exerted a little force, and the number above his head began to soar rapidly. 1, 2, 3, 12, 13, 20. When the number reached 12, all kinds of sighs and shocking voices were already endless. "What's going on? This guy from Tillman actually." While they were discussing, the number had soared to 20. At this time, the scene suddenly became chaotic, and all kinds of noises were heard. How is this possible? Impossible. Impossible. Each voice was trying to deny the facts they saw with their own eyes. Even Yaburo couldn't help but look aside and make a sound of ha. All these voices entered Li Ming's ears. Obviously, Li Ming, who was at full strength, was extremely terrifying, because others didn't know that Li Ming had 3 civilizations in his body, and his strength was more than 3 times that of ordinary people of the same level. The interval between these strengths was naturally not calculated in this way, because there were many design elements, so Li Ming was relaxed even if he faced multiple first-level civilizations at the same time. At the moment, many chaotic voices seemed to remind Li Ming that excessive display of his strength was obviously not a good thing. Thinking of this in his mind, the number above his head had risen to 28. This number was enough to make everyone present dumbfounded, and some people even began to get irritable. Li Ming's thoughts flashed, and his palm suddenly shone. Using the power of Panlong, Li Ming forcibly suppressed his own energy, and the number also dropped back to 12. As the number dropped, the various voices suddenly changed. In this case, it seems to make sense. But what about that number just now? Could it be there is a problem with the equipment? Despite the discussions, Li Ming still set the number at 12. In this way, he could conceal his strength and slightly beat the opponent. Robson and Elks were also surprised to see the number above Li Ming's head, and both of them looked puzzled. What happened just now? Delks turned his eyes and looked at Robson beside him and said. Robson shook his head slightly at first, but his eyes were already thinking about something. Chapter 324, Exclusion. Is there something wrong with the equipment? Delks suddenly said, as if this was the most likely problem he could think of. Robertson did not reply, but a thought flashed through his mind, and his eyes suddenly widened a little. He immediately looked at Li Ming's position again, thinking, kill Adriana in seconds. Could this person's strength really be? Robertson's expression was completely stiff, as if he had seen something terrifying. Stop. Abel's voice suddenly came. Hearing this voice, Li Ming and Millicent took their hands back, and the numbers above their heads disappeared. At this time, Millicent looked at Li Ming's blue light screen with strange eyes. She couldn't see the man's face clearly, but the changing numbers made Millicent's anger suddenly ignite. She looked at him fiercely with her eyes, and said nothing. After a moment, the bricks under Li Ming's feet returned to their original positions. Robertson and Elks hurriedly looked at Li Ming. Before the two could say anything, another voice came. It was Abel's voice. The equipment of the Tillmans needs to be retested before we can continue the competition. Just as Yarborough's voice ended, another voice suddenly came. Commander Yarborough and all the allies, since it is a competition between new members, does that mean that the two new members of our ENA can compete together? The voice came from the ENAs. As soon as this proposal came out, Robertson's face lit up, and he said sternly, Tread. What are you talking about? How can there be a 2-on-1 competition? The ENA man named Treed smiled slightly and said, we are all newcomers. What does it matter if there are more or fewer people? If you Tillmans have 3 newcomers, we won't care. At this time, Zenny, a silver man from the Dayan system, followed up and said, this proposal is not excessive. The strength competition in the alliance is originally a competition of numbers and civilization levels. If you think you are not good enough, you can choose to withdraw. Robertson's face became even uglier when he heard this, but he didn't know what to say for a while. At this time, after a hesitation, Yarborough continued, there is no problem with the equipment of the Tillmans, but, do you still want to continue the competition? At this time, Robertson was hesitant, as if the entire alliance was targeting the Tillmans. Delks snorted angrily, looked at Robertson, and beat his chest, and stamped his feet, saying fiercely, what is this competition? It's obviously excluding us. Robertson naturally knew this. After a long sigh, he shook his head slightly, looked at Li Ming, and opened his mouth. Just when he was about to say something, Li Ming raised his hand, his face solemn, and said, since you are here, there is no reason not to compete, and, the outcome is not certain yet. As he said this, Li Ming pointed at the air in front of him, and the bricks under his feet flew out directly. Delks was about to stop him, but Robson suddenly raised his hand to block Delks. Delks looked puzzled, but Robson said, don't worry, let's see what happens first. Li Ming's figure slowly floated over, and the inner people also floated over, but from the outline, it can be seen that there are indeed 2 people inside. To the other people around, it seems that the victory has been locked, and there is no suspense, but seeing that the Tillman people continue to choose to participate, these people can only let out a series of sighs. At this time, the light curtain surrounded, Millicent and Winslow pressed their palms on the red halo together, and the number above their heads rose rapidly, and stopped at 21. Li Ming glanced at the number and didn't care. He raised his hand, and pressed it on the blue halo. The number above his head also rose rapidly, and reached the number 22 accurately, just like before, just one more than the opponent. At this time, all the civilized galaxies quieted down, and the previous noisy sighs suddenly disappeared. After confirming that his number was higher than the opponent, Li Ming withdrew his hand, and returned to the distance. The equipment under Li Ming's feet had just been confirmed, and there was no malfunction. In other words, the ability Li Ming showed was real, but this ability was unacceptable to everyone present. In Robson's report, it was clearly stated that Li Ming was a first-level civilization, but this energy volume was definitely not something a first-level civilization could achieve. After Li Ming returned, Robson and Elks looked at Li Ming again, and they were already respectful, and did not dare to neglect him in the slightest. Li Ming turned his eyes, glanced at Robson and Elks, and said, "Now, it should be okay for us to participate in the Ruby Star project." Robson and Elks nodded repeatedly, smiling, with respectful eyes, as if the highest leader of the Tillman people was Li Ming. While looking at Li Ming, they kept praising him, yes, yes, yes. At this time, Yarborough and several other members on duty also began to discuss. The senior executives in these alliances had separate connection channels, and they had to make decisions on the number of people in the Ruby Star project. At the same time, the word Li Ming frequently appeared in their discussions. Li Ming, who was far away, could not hear their conversation at all, and naturally had no interest, so he didn't care. But during their discussion, Delx's face was full of displeasure, and he kept muttering something. The result of this competition is so obvious, what else is there to discuss? Delx's words were even more angry. Robson just glanced at the other party, and didn't say much. He was a little nervous. Li Ming could see the mood of the two people. At the same time, he also understood that the position of the Tillmans in the alliance was indeed precarious, and they were obviously excluded. Otherwise, the victory and defeat would not be discussed for so long. Compared with this side, Trade on the inner side was surprised. Looking at Millicent and Winslow who returned, he didn't know what to say. The faces of the three people were not good, but they could only look in the direction of the Tillmans with puzzled and resentful eyes. After a while, Yarborough's voice came. "Everyone, the result of the duel is out. We have also had a careful discussion on the Ruby Star plan, so I will tell you the result. In view of the fact that the Tillmans and the Enners are evenly matched in strength, the result of the duel will not be considered for the time being. We all agree that both sides can participate in this operation, but..." Yarbrough paused at the end, then continued, "It's just that the Enner and Tillmans will share one channel of the teleportation array. Now is the best time to enter Ruby Star. When to enter, and when to leave, you can decide for yourself according to your own situation." As soon as this result was read out, Delx snorted sternly and shouted, "What's the logic? We clearly..." Without waiting for Delx to continue complaining, Li Ming suddenly waved his hand and said, "Since we are allowed to enter, that's enough. As for the rest, I don't think there's any need to worry about it." When Delx heard Li Ming's words, he didn't say anything more. Then Abel said again, "Okay, the meeting is over. Everyone go and get ready." As soon as he finished speaking, the stone bricks under his feet suddenly lit up slightly, and Li Ming only felt a blue light flashing in front of his eyes, and the next moment, his figure came to the previous room. Returning to the room again, Delx followed Li Ming closely and asked, "When do we set off?" Li Ming glanced at him, then at Robertson, smiled slightly, and said, "You have always been members of the Alliance. I should listen to you on this matter." Delx paused after hearing this, and looked at Robertson, but Robertson was also a little confused. After thinking for a while, he sighed. "To be honest, we Tillmans have not participated in the Ruby Star project for 2 sessions, so it is not easy for me to judge when to set off." Li Ming smiled slightly after hearing this, hesitated for a while, and said, "This kind of thing, pros and cons coexist. The person who arrives first is most likely to find Hang Ren first. Similarly, the person who arrives first may also encounter unknown risks first. But since it is for the revival of the Tillmans, even if there are risks, we have to arrive first, so I suggest that we set off immediately. What do you think?" Li Ming continued. The talk even mentioned the revival of the Tillmans, which excited Delx. He nodded and said, "Okay. Let's set off right away." Robson was still hesitant, but after hearing what Li Ming and Elks said, he didn't care. He nodded slightly and replied, "Okay." Chapter 325, Transmission. After the three of them had discussed it, they were ready to enter Ruby Star first. Ruby Star is a fixed common resource of the Alliance, and it has existed for many years. In order to facilitate entry, many technological civilizations of the Alliance jointly developed a teleportation array. The teleportation array of technological civilization is completely different from that of intelligent civilization. The teleportation array of intelligent civilization comes from the space-time tribe and uses fixed materials to teleport over long distances. However, the teleportation array of technological civilization uses technology to drive transmission with huge energy, which is relatively more advanced. However, the transmission of technological civilization is not very stable, so this ultra-long distance transmission requires additional devices to cooperate. The teleportation array is located in the Resource Management Agency of the Alliance, which is located in a remote place in the city. After Li Ming and Robson and others walked out of the conference building, they took the aircraft again and went straight to the location of the Resource Management Building. Resource Management is one of the important agencies. The appearance of the building is no different from other crystal block buildings, but the location is independent, at the edge of the city. There are very few pedestrians here. Without the noise of the city, it gives people a sense of mystery. The aircraft stopped at the reserved location. After getting off the aircraft, the three people went straight into the building. At the same time when the three entered the Resource Management Building, in a meeting building in the city, three aliens were talking closely in a room. These three people were none other than Trade, Millicent and Winslow from the Inner People. However, on the console between the three, blue light was weaving and flashing, just like a printer printing something. After a few seconds, a figure appeared on the console. It was Li Ming. Looking at Li Ming's figure, Trade cast his eyes on Millicent with a smile and said, "This is a new member of the Tillman people." Trade said with a smile and respect, but when he saw Millicent's expression, his expression immediately solidified. Because at this moment, Millicent's eyes were full of fierceness, her eyes flashed coldly, and she stared at the figure information on the console with extreme anger. It turned out to be him. Millicent squeezed out these words from between her teeth, and her expression seemed to tear Li Ming into pieces. Trade was also surprised at this moment. He looked at Li Ming on the console, then at Millicent. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, "Why? You know him?" Millicent glanced at Trade fiercely, then quickly returned her gaze to the console and said, "Where is he now?" Trade paused after hearing this, because Millicent had already made it clear that she was determined to kill Li Ming. He gently extended his right hand and tapped the console. The blue light changed, and a light spot located at the Resource Management Office appeared. This light spot was exactly where Li Ming and others were parked in the aircraft. Seeing this position, Trade was also startled. He looked up at Millicent and said, "They went to the Resource Management Building, where the teleportation array is located. Are they leaving now?" Millicent looked at the operating table in front of her and hesitated for a moment. She suddenly stood up and said, "Let's go. Let's go and take a look." As she said this, Millicent turned and walked out. Winslow immediately followed. Although Trade didn't understand why, he could only follow the two of them. At this moment, Li Ming and others were already in the middle of a teleportation array. The center of the teleportation array was a floating circular platform. The circular platform was 2 meters long and wide, and the area was not large. It was just right for 3 people to stand. The periphery of the circular platform was a silver ring, like an iron ring, with a diameter of 5 meters. It kept rotating and rolling around the position of Li Ming and others. Outside the silver ring was another golden ring with a diameter of 10 meters. It also slowly rotated around the position of Li Ming. There were 3 more rings outside the golden ring, all of which were different colors and were getting bigger and bigger. The rings rotated very slowly, and the direction of rotation was irregular, in a flipping manner. After confirming all the information, Robson looked at Li Ming and said, "Now we can start." Li Ming nodded slightly and didn't say much. Robson then looked into the void and saw a blue light flashing, and a blue ring suddenly appeared under his feet. The ring then rose, forming a light curtain that completely enveloped Li Ming and others. Then, the silver ring suddenly accelerated, followed by the golden ring and the remaining rings on the periphery. The extremely fast rotation made the rings like a ball, wrapping Li Ming and others, layer by layer, and constantly flashing electric light. The lightning and fire instantly filled the entire area, dazzling people and making it impossible to see anything clearly. All they could see was a sphere glowing. The light became brighter and brighter, like a lamp that was getting brighter and brighter. I felt a whitewash in front of my eyes. At that moment, I seemed to be blind, but everything returned to normal after a few seconds. The dazzling light gradually faded, and the speed of the rotating ring slowed down, and returned to its original slowness, but the platform in the middle of the ring and Li Ming, and others on it had completely disappeared. The whole space suddenly became quiet. A moment later, a bright light suddenly flashed at the edge of the teleportation array, and 3 figures came in. They were Trade, Millicent and others. As soon as he saw the teleportation array in front of him, Trade could not help but look at Millicent and whispered, "It seems they have already gone to Ruby Star." Millicent gritted her teeth, the muscles under her eyes twitched slightly, and immediately said, "Let's go too." This sentence made Trade startled, because according to their action plan, now is not the time to set off, but Millicent had already spoken, which made Trade feel helpless. He could only hesitate for a while and replied, "Okay." At this moment, in a huge building on Ruby Star, the center of the ring flashed, and Li Ming and others appeared directly. The device here is exactly the same as the teleportation array device on Isaiah. The difference is that the device here is stationary, and some of the rings have been damaged. Most importantly, it is dark here. The walls of the building are in tatters, and there are even holes in some places. At first glance, it seems like coming to an abandoned factory. Robson's expression changed drastically. His expression was slightly panicked, and he said, "What's going on?" Li Ming narrowed his eyes slightly, and the information about this place has been obtained from Robson's mind. The device here is exactly the same as the device on Isaiah. Both are large teleportation arrays, and its existence is used to return. But it is obvious that this place has been severely damaged. It is impossible to go back from here. Delks looked at all this with a look of surprise, and said, This place has been destroyed, so how can we return?" Robson was also frowning, full of worry, but Li Ming was very calm. After a slight smile, he said, "Since we are here, we should make the best of it. Don't forget the purpose of our coming here. Let's go. Finding Han Ren is the most important thing." As he said this, Li Ming's body slowly floated and headed straight for the broken wall above his head. The broken hole in the wall was 4 or 5 meters long and wide, leading directly to the outside world. Li Ming's figure flew out through this hole, but when passing through this hole, Li Ming's expression changed slightly, and his brows frowned slightly. This wall is more than 10 meters thick, but this gap is only 4 or 5 meters long and wide. The first feeling it gives people is that something has penetrated through here, and it only penetrated this place, which is really weird. In addition, the building space, where the teleportation array is located, is basically full of energy, but there is no energy here. Since it is a building used for the return journey, it must have a lot of energy stored in it, but there is nothing here. Passing through the hole, Li Ming came to the outside, which is also the top of a place. As soon as Li Ming came out, Robson and Elks followed him out, ignoring the two of them, looking around and observing the environment outside. Robson still had a worried look on his face, looking at Li Ming with his eyes, and after hesitating for a while, he said, "Li Ming, finding Han Ren is important, but how can we leave this place?" Li Ming snorted softly and continued to look around, saying, "Don't forget, the Ruby Star project is participated by the entire alliance. Our teleportation array is just one of them. When people from other star systems in the alliance arrive, as long as their teleportation arrays are still intact, can't we leave as well?" Li Ming's words made Robson suddenly realize. Delks was even more excited, shouting, "Yes, after all, it is also an alliance. Will they not let us use it?" Li Ming glanced at the two of them and said coldly, "Okay, finding Han Ren is important, don't worry about the rest." During this conversation, Li Ming had already taken in the surrounding environment completely. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.